Okay. Woo. Okay. Well, everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. The weekly medieval sewing and crafting party combined with, of course, our now traditional getting dressed. So, how is everyone doing today? Today, I am going to be dressing alla Fiorentina. So I'll be putting on my pink wool Gamora, and I will be updating you on the attempts to remove the tar stains from the asphalt that stained it back in October. Not particularly good news, unfortunately. Not bad news, but good. I actually I did use white spirits on this pretty successfully, and it does not seem to have removed the stains. Unfortunately, it only seems to have spread the stains more. They're less dark, but they're definitely still there, and it just kind of looks like now there's a big blotch instead of, concentrated stains. So that kind of failed. Happily, that part is around the hemline, so I'm less concerned because it's probably going to get dirty anyway. But so white spirits did not remove the tar. To think of something else. I've read that kerosene might be good, actually. I don't know where on earth I could get kerosene here, but I'm certain I can. Maybe probably a gas station, which I think is where I'd go in the US too. Unfortunately, there are no Home Depots and whatnot. So, yeah. Oh, I forgot to give you the tour of my usual getting dressed. Okay. 1470s to 1490s Florentine style. And so first, of course, I have my camicia. This is geometric construction, which means just squares and rectangles and triangles, no arms, curves, or anything like that. The thing that creates the shaping, how do you get that shaping? And I never even realized there was shaping before I started doing these live streams. So there is basically it's probably a 5-inch by 5-inch square in the gore in the armpit that connects the sleeves to the bodies right there at the armpit. And that actually is what creates this draping very, very specifically. Also, it is a fine linen. It's almost handkerchief weight, maybe handkerchief weight for certain handkerchiefs. I don't know measurement, its actual. I couldn't tell you that because I didn't buy this from a place that labeled their fabrics that way. But yeah, so that's how we get this shaping. It is in the underarm square gore. Everything else is just rectangles, front and back. There's no side gores, there's no triangular gores or anything like that. Only the square in the arm, hence the shaping and the draping. 100% pure linen, and this is a linen I actually bought in Korea, but was ironically made in the US and then imported into Korea. So how fun. Yeah. Anyway, if you have any questions, any specific questions about the if you want to watch what it was like to actually refinish the neckline on this, do the pleats and everything and attach the facing, I did that in a couple of live streams together with you all a couple of months ago, actually. Okay, so over top of the camicia, this is the layer, this is the layer that takes all of the damage. This is the layer that gets dirty. This is the layer that gets laundered and that can be boiled and that can have all sorts of mean things done to it to restore it to its pristine whitish state, right? Over most places, in all places in 15th century Europe, comes an intermediate. This is the gown that goes of the camicia, but is generally for women of certain elevation in society. You don't wear this if you go out. Serving women dressed in just the camora, as it's called in sort of the Florentine greater sphere of influence. Bologna falls in that, Pisa, Lucca, right? But you would never leave the home in just this layer. However, I'm inviting you all into my home today, so I will be wearing just this layer for our fun creative session together. Okay, so it laces in the front, and these sleeves are sewn on in just one part. Some of you have asked me about sleeves that lace on, and that doesn't seem to be a thing in Florence. Very, very. In fact, I can't think of any Florentine sleeves that lace in. Milanese have sleeves that lace in. The Venetian sleeves that lace in. The Neapolitan court, those ladies have sleeves that lace in. I think also the Cypriot court embodied former queen of Cyprus who ends up taking refuge in Venice, but that might be her adopting Venetian styles rather than reflecting actually Cypriot styles in the 15th century. So yeah, Florence, they seem to sew them in and possibly pin them, but they always look sewn in. And yes, they could have sleeves in opposing colors, and I could absolutely change out for one of the pairs of sleeves with one of my other Gamore. And what I would do then is I would just snip the stitches here, snip the stitches there, and then whip stitch in the other pair. And yeah, you might be thinking to yourself, wow, that probably takes a lot of time. Well, remember, life before the second industrial revolution, the latest industrial revolution, was much slower. It was just much slower. You weren't expected around, there wasn't this, keep time. And your day was not scheduled hour by hour by hour. Not even for the great potentates were their days scheduled like that. So you just have time to do things like get dressed, like change your sleeves out. And so it would be no problem to quickly whip stitch on a different pair of sleeves, or have your lady's maid, have your damsel, your servant, your maid whip stitch on a different pair of sleeves. Check local hardware stores for kerosene. Ah, good tip. Stargazer, welcome. Audio is bopping in and out. Is it now? That's interesting. Okay, how is the audio for everyone else? I have no idea why the audio is bopping in and out. I've turned off all Bluetooth things. There should be nothing picking up the audio. So yeah, let me know if the audio is still coming in and out, and we'll go to the device microphone, which is not as good, but better than nothing. I know. I'm going to be cursed when it comes to audio. Since I started doing all stuff many, many years ago. Maybe try the other microphone. Maybe. When I started doing this stuff many, many years ago, from the very beginning during COVID, when I started doing paid dance classes via Zoom, two microphones, see what happens. Okay. A bit choppy. I thought it was on my end. Storms. Okay for the audio. Susan, when you say okay, or is it choppy or not? Because there's some people have perfectly fine audio and other people don't. I don't understand that. I really don't. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to be using a new lace today. Yeah, how's that for accessories? I need our stings to make me some nice covers for these microphones so they look like they're nouches into my garments. There's an idea. Okay, so I actually made a new lace, finally. I should have live streamed this, but I didn't. And I used I finished it off with a new braid. I actually did something interesting. So the two different kinds of 5-bow flat braids that I now know, and it's really fascinating to see the difference. Let's see if we can show you the difference here in this. The difference, both of these are made with 5 bows, but the technique is technique is just different enough that one ends up being significantly wider than the other. Very strange, strange, fascinating, interesting, all of those things. Yep, so we're going to be using our new lace today, since all of my other laces died honorable deaths. Oh, wow, Gage, thank you so much. That is, wow, super generous. Really appreciate that. Okay, so not choppy. Okay, interesting. I wonder what's going on there. I wonder if people for others. That is super weird. I've always told people I don't do technology. I don't do medieval living history because I like modern technology. I'm generally good at modern technology, but modern technology doesn't open me. Okay, so this is spiral lacing. So we're going to actually basically whip stitch the dress shut, except that this is a style that doesn't actually close. This is that really cheap style before Savonarola takes over Florence, where it's actually open and see the white undergarment, my camicia. And remember, we really have to think of this camicia as underwear, right? This is underwear. And, to actually get to probably when they making garments so that you could actually see the camecha, it was probably a pretty racy move, right? Because before that, you never got to see a lady's smock or her camecha or her shirt, however, all the different ways that they're called. So yeah, this would have been, I'm assuming this was a pretty, pretty ballsy move, as it were. Breasty move? I don't know. Either way, it was bold, it was brazen. And what I do know is that after Savonarola takes over Florence, and Florence becomes this really staid, super modest place where they actually pass laws that sumptuary laws that necklines have to be up at the collarbone. If you look at portraits from the 1490s in Florence, you're going to notice the difference between portraits from the 1480s and portraits from the 1470s. You will absolutely notice that the necklines are suddenly super high, and also the fronts no longer are open in the front. They lace completely flush, completely shut. So that's all because of Savonarola and his tedious moralizing of everything. Yeah. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, unfortunately, I suspect that I'm not getting all of the messages at the time, and unfortunately, I am single manning. I'm solo manning today's show. My condottiero has traveled across the ocean to the west, and he is now in the Pacific Northwest. And so I don't have anyone to actually. Fortunately, I should have set up my laptop. I didn't think about it to monitor comments. Okay, so today I've got an exciting show for you today. At least it's exciting for me. I'm starting a new project. So I have, some of you have seen the little sort of Vespaio, the Florentine word for a net. One of the Florentine words for a net. My reta, the little net, that cap, little net-like coif that you see on Giovanna Tornabuoni. I think it's Giovanna, might not be Giovanna. In the young lady in the Cappella Tornabuoni, and you see it on other ladies in fresco in and around Florence and Naples, in Milan, especially later on. So that's the little net-like thing. Oh dear. I did not get it out. So I've talked about my bag, my magical bag of spare finger loop braiding. This is that bag. It also contains my reta. So this is, I'll finish getting dressed first and I'll put it on and show you. So I'm going to be making a new one. So today we're going to start the finger loop braiding for that, actually. And I don't have my condottiero here. I don't have a lady in waiting. I don't have a damsel, because lady in waiting is actually an 18th century term, a 17th century term, but certainly not a medieval term. They just are referred to as damsels or ladies of the queen, of the duchess, whatever. So I don't feel like stumbling through taping this on to my head myself. So I'm just going to tie my braids up in the back, and I'm just going to tie off the ribbon, and then I'm going to take the long ribbons that would normally be used to tape this to my head and just wrap them around this little very dirty bun. Good morning, Dominic. Thank you for joining us. Did I remember to put up the adorable trio? Which adorable trio? Hold on. Okay. Have I been to Hawaii? I have not been to Hawaii. Not because I have avoided it, it just hasn't come my way. I've been all over the world. I've been all over Asia. I've been I've been to North Africa and South Africa. I haven't been to any of the central parts of Africa yet. They are definitely on my list. I lived in Europe for 12 years, so I've been all over Europe. I've been all over North America. I have not been to Mexico or South America, so the other Americas are also on my list as well. I have not been to Hawaii. Okay, so dirty bun. The thing that we're going to be making, that I'm going to be starting with you today, is my reta, and that is this poor wrinkled thing, which has just been shoved in a pouch and stored. It does get a shape again if I put it on, if I actually put it on my head. So I'll show you what that looks like here. I made this with Fingerloop braiding in 2007. And lots of lessons learned, and I always said I'm going to make another one. Well, I'm doing it now. This is just what's happening. So this is basically, it just goes on my head like this, and then it ties under. And that is the reta. Get a little closer so you can see. Yeah. Right, that's how it looks on the top and on the sides, right? So that is what I'm going to make a new one, because this one is very, very ready. Actually, I have many Mexican friends. Y también hablo español, o castellano, como se llama en España. So yeah, I have many Mexican friends, actually. Okay, so hold on a minute. Yeah, okay. And great. So, by the way, Ryan, you can log in as me on your phone and actually do the thing. You can mod it from your end. I should have thought to make you a mod. I could have made you a mod. Oh well. Like I said, I don't like focusing my energy on arranging the technology. I prefer to focus my energy on doing the creative medieval much more. Oh, how is the sound now, guys? Everyone, let me know. Also, of course, if you're watching and enjoying, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe and all the things. Although, actually, I think if you're commenting, you have to be a subscriber. So, yeah, don't forget to follow. If you're watching from Twitch or from TikTok, welcome. Unfortunately, I don't have a second device this time on which to monitor the chat in those for us, so I'm sorry. I apologize for that, but I hope you're enjoying the show anyway. Okay. So I'm using to lace up everything today. I am using this bodkin, and this is a replica off of one that's seen in a portrait with a gown very much like this, one of Ghirlandaio's portraits, I'm pretty certain, and it's fantastic. I love this thing. You can buy these on Etsy. Kate Ramsey, she is not a channel sponsor. I'm just putting the word out there for a fellow creator. That's all. Sound is doing better. Great. Oh, yes. Okay. When you're done driving, my dearest condottiero, that's probably a good idea to not be a moderator while we're driving. Okay. Well, all it took to get the sound better, I guess, is 2 different microphones to make sure it's all getting picked up all the time. I don't know. Okay. So I'm going to be making a new one of these rete. And that means I'm going to be doing it with Fingerloop braiding. Now, were the original lovely little net-like things, were they originally made of Fingerloop braiding? I have no extant ones. It could be that they were made with braiding. It could be that they're made with tablet woven narrowwares, which would be ribbon of some kind, right? But I do have the equipment. I could tablet weave, except I don't have a tablet. I don't have a loom. I could set up the waist loom thing, but anyway, I enjoy Fingerloop braiding because it's much more physically active. So I'm going to be making one using Fingerloop braiding. So that means we're going to have 2 braids. I've thought about this carefully. We're going to do one braid, and this is the thick version, so it's going to be much thinner than this. But one of the braids will be this one. Will be the thin lace of 5 bows. Right, and that's going to be the parts that will go over here, the 4 cross pieces that provide the shape. And then I'm going to be doing the lace bend, which we also demonstrated. I think all my ladies currently functioning in the role of packaging closures. Okay, and then the lace bend, also in a much finer thread, are going to be the cross pieces, the one or the zigzagging netting between each of the cross pieces. So we're going to be making those two. Okay, question. The eyelets you were sewing on for the lacing center, where did you obtain them? They're very lovely. Takeda. These lacing rings are replicas of originals found in the Thames, and they are made by Billy. So he's talking about these lacing rings. These are by Billy and Charlie's finest quality pewter wares. I forget what their actual sobriquet is, but if you look up pewter casting Billy and Charlie's, you will find their shop. Yeah, they're beautiful. I love these things. And the fantastic thing is that these are Thames finds, but you see this exact lacing ring in a lot of different 15th century Italian portraits. So yeah. Okay. All dressed and ready to go for today's crafting session. So I am going to be doing Fingerloop. This is the real deal. No more samples. We're doing it for real. You're going to get to see me working with silk and probably hear me cursing. Yes, because I'm going to be using this lovely silk yarn. This is 20/22, so 20/2 for your size of your silk thread. And unfortunately, it's had a little bit of a hard life. Welcome to my world. So it's a little fuzzier than it maybe should be, but still, you can see that beautiful sheen. Isn't that gorgeous? So that is going to be the basis for this new little. Yeah, Billy and Charlie's, exactly, Tegeda. Love Billy and Charlie's stuff. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to start with we're going to start by making the thin lace of 5 bows, and I'm going to start by looming this up, and also that means I have to actually find an end to work with, and I'm going to have to set up. I didn't think about actually warping this, by which I mean doing the loops. You might get to see a very much less apartment. Looking for a piece of furniture that is sufficient. Okay, y'all are coming with me. We're going over. The TV looks like a good, nice, long set of loops. Okay. So I'm going to use my giant flat screen TV as the basis for wrapping my loops for my finger loop braiding. And I've been thinking about this. I think I might have to double this up because the thread is actually rather thin. So I think I'm going to do double loops on each hand, which might also lead you to hear cursing on my end. Okay, so to warp, I'm going to back it up so you can actually see me better. Apologize for probably what is going to make you rather dizzy. Okay. So I'm going to warp around the. So different people have different techniques for doing these loops. Some people just like to cut them all over the length and then tie them at the end. I prefer called the warping method, which means you actually wrap, like you were weaving actually. You wrap your thread around something like 2 points, 2 people's arms, furniture, whatever. And no, Susan, I didn't lock up the beasties. So they're sleeping now. I'm assuming that as soon as they hear the sound, the susurration of, or at least Nobby will. She and Tommy are in the back corner cuddled up and sleeping, but I'm confident that will not last long. So, yeah. No, you know what? I'm thinking about it. I'm going to go ahead and experiment with making one of these with just what single thread, and then we'll see how that actually looks. Doing it really long though, so I hope it works out. I mean, to be honest, I can always find a use for finger loop braiding, especially pretty silk finger loop braiding. So if this doesn't work out to be quite right for the reta, I can use it for something else, no problem. So remember, when you're warping your finger loop, or when you're warping your yarn or thread for finger loop, try not to pull overly. You don't want to put it under tension before you actually get it under tension, by which I mean your fingers. So yeah, just keep that in mind, because I can feel this stretching in my fingers as I wrap it, and so I'm trying not to pull too tightly. Right, okay. Oh, thank God, there's a pair of snips under me. That was not planned. Okay. And always remember that, wow, these are, beloved, these are dull. They need help. I think those are his leather shears, but they really need help. Okay, so, and always remember to leave enough strands, enough length on either end of your finger loop thread so that you can tie a knot and even several knots. Because remember, if you don't tie knots sufficiently, you will cry. Okay, and then I always wrap the ends around the whole bundle a couple of times to make one package of loops. And this keeps everything neat and tidy. And of course, once again, put in several knots. Okay, so now it's all warped. I'm going to set up the area for the braiding. So I have a chair with a 30-pound barbell on it that is acting as my anchor. I might actually have to back you all up because these are really long. So you're also going to get to see me doing my Pilates version of finger loop braiding this morning. So I've been doing a lot of interesting reading this week. I fell into the rabbit hole of guilds, actually, guilds across Europe. And because I am doing the research for the video on rings that I'm going to be producing for Armor and Castings, and that led me to that led me somehow to medieval guilds. Oh yeah, it was the wills, right? I was looking for wills because rings are mentioned in wills. And so that made me, then the term the freedom was used, and that made me wander down a rabbit hole. Because I've heard of people in the freedom before, and I never really thought. And this time I did, and that led me down medieval guild structure, how guilds operated, were women parts of rabbit, and that, gave me a deeper and more rich understanding of, medieval for the average person. Because to be honest, especially as a Burgundian countess, or a countess who also resides in the lands of Burgundy, there's a lot of interaction with guild members and craftsmen at the upper end of society. So that is something I should actually know more about. I should understand how the guilds operate. I should understand their power structures and their organization. No, I did it right. Okay. Yep. Okay, so I have my loop set up, and now it is time to anchor them. So let me just see how far away this is. I'm gonna have to back you guys up. These loops are very long. Okay, apologize for the disturbance. Okay. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and anchor. Yeah, the whole guild thing was really interesting, because of course, there's this idea that of women in the past in medieval Europe having been just, sort of housewives, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, that isn't true in the least. Women were wives, especially in the role of wives, especially in the middle classes, were equal partners. Right. So, they literally ran the business, they managed the household. And And they often had guild membership either as part of their husband's guild membership or on their own. And of course, there's different kinds of guilds. People don't realize that there are, what the hell? Did you really do that? You did. You bad, naughty, naughty, naughty. My knot migrated. My anchor, the knot on my bundle migrated through the anchor stitch. And that's the problem with this silk, is that I told you you're going to hear cursing. I love silk. I love silk so much. Working with silk can be a real pain in the tuchus because it's slippery and it's sly, and it will absolutely do things you don't want it to do. Like in this case. The knot base of my loops actually migrated through the anchor. Anyway, so yeah, there's so many misconceptions about women's roles in these guilds. And, people assume, a lot of modern people assume, oh, a guild, well, that's a craft guild. Well, there were trade guilds and there were craft guilds, and they weren't the same thing. And even if it's called, for example, the Tailors Guild, it might be the Merchant Tailors Guild, which is different than the Craftsman's Tailors Guild. At least it is in London, in England. Guilds weren't necessarily all the same, depending on which part of Europe you were, which period, because of course they developed over time. And places like Spain, what's now Spain, which would have then been Aragon or Castilla Leon, they got them later because the whole Reconquista thing meant that they it wasn't a thing that could develop at the time. And so, in the case of Valencia, which had a highly developed silk trade, they don't start getting their own trade guilds in some cases until like the end of the 15th century. So it's been a very interesting to wander down this path. And there's a woman who was admitted to what was then the Co-Fraternity of St. John the Baptist, for tailors and linen armor makers. She did not make linen armor. She was actually a silk woman by trade, but her husband was a tailor. Her second husband, her first husband was a cutler, and she was part of that guild as well. Her second husband was a tailor, and she was admitted to the guild as a free woman of the guild in recognition. He was a master of the guild, so he was a guild master. And then after he died, they courted her like crazy. They sent her gifts. They invited her to be the guest of honor at prestigious feasts and functions. And, she ended up, and they got their wish, because when she died, she ended up bequeathing them quite a bit. So, and that was kind of, the goal, is that she donated a house to them, for instance. And apparently the Merchant Guild of Tailors, as it is now called in London, just disposed of that house in the 1970s. So they were actually getting income from it, from rent. So talk about it. And apparently she also paid for kitchens for them, brand new kitchens for them. And apparently those kitchens are still in use. So talk about a good investment. 1440s new kitchen, still in use in the 21st century. I wish all of our home improvement investments were like that. Yeah. Yeah, twitchy witch, exactly. Silk. It looks so pretty when it's done, but while you're working with it, you just want it to die a horrible death or burn it or something. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so these are even longer than I was anticipating them being. Well, you all are going to see something here. You're going to witness something. Okay, something. We'll see what it is you're going to see. What is everyone working on today? And I apologize, I'm not going to get to the comments as often, because once I get started here, yeah, I wish, you know what I might be able to do? I might regret this. We'll see if this works. I'm going to try to put this on the giant TV I have on YouTube, see if I can pick it up there and just monitor the chat there at least, because I can't, this is way too far away now for me to actually read the comments, plus there's a glare on the screen. Oh, look, there I am live. Let's just turn the volume off. Yeah, there we go. I think I can Oh, there's an ad. Well, so remember everyone, I know ads are annoying, but YouTube doesn't give creators any money unless you actually either watch the ad for 30 seconds or click on visit the advertiser link. So if you want to support my channel and make sure I keep doing this, because eventually I might actually get actually pay something, then don't forget to click on don't forget to click on visit advertiser. You don't have to watch whatever opens. As soon as you click and it opens, you can close it again, no problem. Let me skip. Anyway, okay, so I'm all set up now, and this is a 5 bow lace, so it's actually pretty easy. I'm looking at it and thinking I might want to have waxed it. Okay, now let's see if I can go to the chat. Oh, look at that live chat. Sweet. Show me the live chat. Maybe? Oh, there it is. Successfully got it. Okay. Okay. Okay, so got it all. Oh, I have premium. If you have premium, it's a whole different thing. Appreciate you watching. Thank you, Queenie. I want a video of those. I want an AI video of those weird animals that, oh, yeah, like the lion in my background. Oh, yeah. So, guys, AI is evil. AI videos are terrible. They're actually killing artistry as an industry, and they've stolen artwork. Living artists, they've stolen their art, haven't paid them anything, and use them to train AI to make those videos. So honestly, I can't approve of the use of AI. It's killing, it is literally killing human creativity and taking advantage of artists' actual work without providing them with any remuneration and kicking them out of a job. So yeah, I can't approve of AI. Even though it would be fun. So naturally, I'm doing a silk blackwork sampler in prep for an Elisabethan shirt for my brother. Oh, of course. The same. I think you were working on that last time, weren't you, Twitchy Witch? Okay, so let's see if I can just remember how to do this one straight up without looking at the instructions again. We'll see what happens. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so this is what happens when you have ridiculously long loops. You have to involve your feet. You get foot involvement, as it were. Go there, and then we go there, and then we don't reverse on this one. Yes. Okay, and we tamp down. Okay, and then we don't reverse on that one, right? Bring this, and we do reverse on this one. Yes. And we don't reverse on that one. Okay, yeah, actually, that's good. This one seems to have entered my muscle memory vocabulary. Yay. I'm sorry that because the loops are so long that you have to see some of the not beautiful background. I apologize. Let's scoot this table out of it. Okay. Get over there, go to there, tighten. Remember, the beginning of your finger loop braid is always going to be a little messy. It's just the way it is. But that's the part that either gets buried in a seam or tucked under or something like that. So yeah, don't worry about it. Take this across, go to there. Nice. Okay. So yeah, this Eleanor Langwith was her name, and I love it when we actually have names of women in history. And you know, it's funny how this. She paid, of course, when in her will, she paid for mourners to be dressed all in white. By the way, white was the color of mourning in late 15th century England for official mourning, not black, the fashion color. So she paid for mourners, and she made all these bequeathments, and the whole purpose was that they should pray for the soul, and whether or not, I don't know if you believe in an afterlife or not, and we're not going to discuss that here today necessarily, but to a certain degree, she certainly has immortality bequeathments. They're still talking about her in the merchant. There was an article about her on their page. So in the Merchant Tailors Guild of London. The Merchant Tailors Company of London. Sorry, that's what it's called now. So yeah, I did try using spirits. Some of you heard me talking at the beginning of the thing to clean the tar off of this. It did not work, unfortunately. So yeah, that's sad. It kind of also made it a little bit worse, maybe even, because it made a blotchy, big, profuse stain instead of a concentrated little black flecks, or not so little black flecks. So yeah. Sorry, just tamping it down. It'll be interesting to see how this works. So that was disappointing. I'm not certain if I want to try it else, or I'm just going to let it rest at this point and just basically hope that over time the stains fade, as some stains do anyway. We'll see. I am looking forward at Pennsic to engaging in some fun medieval laundering, using fermented urine to get our whites whiter, laying them out on the laundering green. Fortunately, it looks like almost none of my apprentices or ladies in waiting are attending Pennsic this year, so that's kind of sad. It's yeah, well, and no one I know from Europe is attending. They're all skipping America for a while anyway, and with good reason after the way those German tourists were treated. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, twitchy witch, exactly. See if it were, and actually, it's like an embroidery patch job at this point. Yeah. If it were not right on the hemline where it drags, I would, but it is where it drags on the ground, so I'm not as bothered by it. If we're up in the middle of the skirt, probably, then the problem is I'd have to do embroidered patches, diapering it everywhere, and that's not this gown. This is my gown, right? This is not a cota, it's a Gamora, so it doesn't get that kind of decorative tension. So yeah. But tomorrow, everyone, I am going to be teaching Philip from Irish medieval history to Fingerloop braid. He has never done anything like this before in his life, even though he does do first millennium Irish living history, or has done it. So this, if you want to tune in tomorrow morning, my time, tomorrow evening, afternoon, your time, and see how that goes, you can also do the lesson with us. I'll be teaching the basic five bow braid, which is not this one. And there'll be a kind of 3-for-1 deal the way I teach that class. So yeah, tune in for that. There should be some shenanigans, I'm assuming. It's not going to be straightforward, I'm pretty certain. Yeah. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. And I have some fun books for you today in our book corner. I went and pulled out some ones I'm pretty certain I haven't discussed before. I haven't discussed in a while anyway. So I've got very different kinds of medieval cookbooks. I've got Roi Rene's Book of Love, which is one of the gorgeously illuminated books in the history of calligraphy and illumination. And you'll agree with me once you see the so-called miniatures in this thing. Holy crap. Talk about masterpieces. It's funny how often the illuminated miniatures or the illuminated frontispieces in manuscripts, medieval manuscripts, get ignored as art, right? We always talk about the big panel paintings, right? Everyone knows Botticelli and Ghirlandaio and Jan van Eyck and Hans Memling, right? They know the Holbeins, but you look at the pages, the illuminated, the painted pages in some of manuscripts, and your jaw drops at how the detail, the colors, the shading, the mastery of the whole thing. But they're not big and brash and can't be hung up on walls, so I guess they get ignored frequently. But not by me. I don't ignore them, because I'm using them for fashion history research often, which puts them on my radar. And then, of course, I look more closely at them as a piece of art in and of themselves. Peppermint, welcome back. Nice to have you back in the thing. Yeah, this, yeah, yarn is, yeah, so this thread, yeah, I'm probably going to get some blisters. I'm anticipating some blister action by the end of this project. So yeah, for those who are just joining, I'm doing finger loop braiding, a thin lace of 5 bows to my new reta. That's the cute little net on my head. I don't have evidence that finger loop braiding would have been used for this specific item, but it's plausible. And since we have no extant ones, and I've never found any purchase orders for such a with the details of the materials, you know, why not? Why not? This would certainly be something that, say, nuns working in a monastery for extra money, as many nuns did in the 15th century. They did a lot of textile production. They did a lot of narrowwares work, a lot of embroidery and blank work. They made undergarments for people, right? So it's entirely likely that such a reta could have easily been made by a nun working in a monastery in 15th century Italy. And this technique is super easy because it requires minimum equipment, right? And the setup goes pretty darn quickly too. Whereas if you've ever done tablet weaving, the setup is fussy as hell compared to this. Compared to finger loop braiding, weaving is fussy. I'm not saying it's fussy. There aren't fussier things, but yeah, tablet weaving, she be fussy. I mean, any kind of weaving, any kind of loomed weaving is fussy, just the setup, right? The setup is the longest process for the most part. Once you get it set up, it can go pretty quickly actually, but the setup, whew. If you've ever watched a loom get set up for hand weaving, especially the more complicated the weave, or if it's, God forbid, it's damasked or brocaded, God's blood. Talk about a process. Okay, I'm going to find a spot that would start me at the beginning of the pattern, which is here. And then I'm going to go check what we've got going on. Well, it's actually looking pretty nice and shiny. I think it'll be wide enough. We'll see. I might have to go back and through, and I might have to make another one with double. But this could be wide enough. I'll show you. Can't see it now, but you will. I promise. But this is super shiny. I'm loving the sheen of this silk. It's great. Pretty lovely. In fact, I bought this specifically several times actually, with the idea that it could be used either for finger loop braiding or for embroidery. Oh, and the embroidery project, I was thinking, Twitchy Witch, I think you requested the embroidery project, or together. Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do, I was thinking of doing another sleeve patch is like a year project, but I do actually need to make a new mitre or horn, or what some of you would know as a hennin, but was never called that in the Middle Ages. So I need to make a new one for reasons, because the movers one, but also I've been wanting to make a new one for a while anyway, with new understandings of that style of headdress. So I want the cover to be embroidered. So I will be setting up a new, not a hennin cover, and I think it's good pearl work in the style of Maria Portinaris, I think. So you might get to see a multimedia effect there. I'm probably going to be doing my fleur-de-lis with my initials on it, I think. Of course, my medieval name, so that's going to be like an I, basically, because the medieval J is not really J-like, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's going to be a project I will be starting here, because that needs to be done by Pennsic, or by some part of Pennsic. Even if it's not done by the beginning, it might get finished at Pennsic. So that will be coming up. So stay tuned for embroidery. On the other project news, I'm excited to tell you that I am done with the pattern, my Diego di Cavaniglia style farsetto pattern for the condottiero. I will be, one of the perks my patrons and channel members is going to get, I will be laying out the pattern pieces on a big grid, so that you can, drawing it out so that you can basically, if you want, you can take the pattern and adapt it for your own size and, you know, scale it up, that kind of as needed. So that will be happening this week. I've got to go and get the big giant grid paper to do that for you, but I will be doing that. So if that's something to which you would like access, my finished layout for the farsetto pattern, consider becoming on Patreon or a channel member. So I'm very excited about that because that means I can finally start sewing. Well, I can cut out and start sewing. And so I've been considering how I want to do that, how I want to lay it out, how I want to actually construct it, because Diego's farsetto is actually not as well preserved as Pandolfo Malatesta's farsetto. And what's interesting about his, only piece of lining survives, like a tiny piece of silk. So we know that it was lined in silk. Okay. The first one I'm going to be making for my condottiero is going to be wool. It's going to match this, actually. It's going to be made out of this this salmon pink wool, and it will have a fustian lining. Fustian is a cotton linen blend, but is interesting about Diego's is that there is no quilting stitching in the chest area at all on the surface. So any quilting or shaping that was no doubt there based on the shape of the garment, but is no longer extant, was probably done in intermediate layers, is my point. So what that means is that I'm probably going to have for certain, I will have to have the quilting sandwiched, or the padding, the farsa, sandwiched between the lining and the interlining, or between two layers of interlining. So that's what I have to consider. How many layers do I want this thing to have? More layers equals more shape, nearly always. So the two options for setup are lining, the part that's right against the undershirt, then two interlinings between which are sandwiched the farsa, the padding, the batting, cotton in this case, and then the top, the shell fabric, which in this case is going to be wool. Or I can do it so that the lining and one layer of interlining are the sandwich for the padding. So those are currently the two options, and I'm thinking about that. Obviously, for heat retention reasons, the latter one is probably preferable to a modern person. But I suspect, so here's my concern about doing it that way. That means that the quilting stitches, well, okay, actually, this was my concern, but then I thought about it again. So my big thing, in this case, I want the quilting stitches not to be directly exposed to the underside. That's where a lot of rubbing happens, right? Between the lining of your garment and your shirt, there's a lot of friction happening there. So that's going to wear quilting stitches away. So, but I could quilt it. I could absolutely, I think I can make it work. I could quilt it to just one layer of interlining, then tack it into the lining or even the shell, without those stitches actually coming to the surface. And then all the quilting stitches are still completely encased within the layers of the farsetto, between the lining and the shell, but without those stitches being exposed to direct friction. Yeah. On the other hand, having two layers of interlining and using that to sandwich the padding and having the quilting stitches go through both, that will create probably a shape. Yeah. In the case of Pandolfo Malatesta's, if I recall correctly, the farsa, the cotton batting, is actually contained between two. Interestingly, hemp is like the forgotten. Northern Europe, hemp seems to be completely poo-pooed, but in the Mediterranean parts of the world, they actually were still using hemp as a fabric. And in Korea, it's definitely a traditional historical fabric. In fact, I've got a length of traditionally woven narrow loom hemp in the washing machine that I washed yesterday. And I was thinking, once I'm done with this, I might actually iron it with you guys watching and talk about it. And then you can actually see what a medieval style looked like, because this is woven in the traditional fashion on a traditional loom, on a historical loom. You know, I was also thinking about the difference, the meaning of the word traditional that we use a lot. And it's, you know, what is the difference? You know, we talk about traditional Korean clothing or traditional Japanese clothing. Well, what is the difference between traditional and historical? At what point does something become a historical practice rather than a traditional practice? Is it, and maybe I just answered, and for me, maybe it's that if it's traditional, it's still being practiced in some way, but it does date back for a little while anyway. It's not a recent tradition. But then how far back does something have to go to count as tradition? I guess is maybe the more interesting philosophical point there. Okay, I'm just going to try to look at the comments here in a moment. Sorry, guys. At the live chat, I wrapped up in you all know what happens to me. No, I need to find a good stop, darn it. No, okay. I'm at a stopping spot. I can now go take a look at the chat, I think. Let me see if I can figure this out. How to go to the chat and get down to it. And actually scroll through it. Seems to be some kind of weird delay. Actually, okay, there it goes. No, I don't know. Now we'll see if I can actually scroll up. Oh, no, damn it. Okay, so unfortunately, it looks like I can't actually back it up that way. That's annoying. Okay, well, we'll keep going. Might have to just stop and go over to the device that's in front of me and look at through the chat there. I don't like doing this by myself. This is not good without someone there to monitor the comments for me and relay them to me. It's easy to do if I'm sitting and sewing because I've got the screen right there, but with Fingerloop braiding, you all are literally like 7 feet away from me. For me, traditional means that you do it without overt reason for its own sake. Interesting. So traditional weaving, for instance, Twitchy Witch, would that definition apply in that case? Also, okay, so I'm going to say if you all had actual questions and I didn't get to them, I'll be able to scroll back at this point, so please post them again. I'm now actually can see the chat right over here without doing weird things to be able to see it. Yeah, so yeah, that's where I'm at on the Condottiero's Farsetto, and I'm pretty excited about that. I can't tell you how excited I am about the quilting. So on Diego di Cavaniglia's Farsetto, the quilting stitches so there's shaping for the collar, the high-backed collar, that entirely comes from quilting stitches. There is no separate piece for the collar that you sometimes see in earlier farsetti. And so that's entirely achieved by quilting contoured stitches that are 1 millimeter apart from each other. Rows of quilting stitches that are only 1 millimeter apart. If you don't have a visceral sense of what a millimeter is, I encourage you to go get a ruler right now and look on the metric side of your ruler. We'll see that 1 millimeter is crazy narrow a gap between those contouring line contour. And yes, I'm excited about doing this quilting, this contoured quilting at that ridiculously microscopic scale. I don't know why, but there's something just that appeals to me about using stitching to create such fine stitching to create that shaping. Yeah. And then the skirts are also quilted, but not 1 millimeter stitches, so they're further apart. The sleeve is also quilted, also not 1 millimeter, or the forearm of the sleeve has quilting stitches, also not 1 millimeter apart. So yeah, I'm actually excited about the quilting stitches because on Diego di Cavaniglia's Farsetto, the stitches are so fine that it looks like they're machine sewn. Like seriously looks machine sewn. I know I'm often saying, well, you know, medieval stitching isn't necessarily as perfect as we might imagine it. Well, then along comes Diego di Cavaniglia's garment, and your jaw just drops. Yeah, this thing was stunning when it was brand new. I mean, well, even when it went into the tomb, it was probably still back before, you know, a corpse basically disintegrated and sat in a dark, damp space for 600 years. It was amazing. Almost 600 years. So I am excited to be proceeding ahead with that, but I'm not going to do Tiara returns because I want to, especially because it's a new pattern, right? Brand new pattern. And we did a mock-up in a heavy linen, but that's not the same thing as making the actual final garment with all of the padding and all of that, because we didn't do a mock-up with. So I want him here for constant fittings and checkings as we work along in the process. So the thing I can do before he gets back is I will be laying it out and cutting it. And maybe I'll do that as a live stream. You all can watch me crawling all over the ground as I lay out these pieces and cut them. And I can baste some things together. But unfortunately, without him here, I really don't want to do anything. I definitely don't want to do any quilting until we're 100% sure that the pieces are the size they need to be. Yeah, there will be no quilting without him present. But that means I will have time to, therefore, work on my new miter, my new knot a hennin, and the embroidery for that. And of course, as you all know, right now we are working on the components for a new reta. So I've got other things I can do in the interim, but it just means I'm going to have to put the farsetto on hold. That being said, I will be putting together the project vlog on the first steps of fitting the farsetto and talking about some of the reasons behind what we did to actually fit the pattern. So that'll be coming out at some point. And you all saw I have debuted the new frontleted veil, my Burgundian style veil. And I do that I will be getting the project vlog out for that. It's pretty simple, but you know, still, as always with all of my project vlogs, include details of the historical foundations for it, documentary evidence for such a garment, little history involving veils, because there's stuff involving veils that are worn over top of miters, the knot a hennin. So yeah, that will all go into that project vlog. And then and for those of you who like my not a milkmaid coif, I have a lot of not a things in my wardrobe, my medieval wardrobe. Anyway, the not a milkmaid coif, I will be doing, I've announced it before, I'll announce it again. I am doing a live Zoom workshop on how to make it. It's a three session workshop, 2 hours each session, hand sewn. I will take you from beginning to end. We will together make the not a milkmaid coif. And I will teach you hand sewing techniques. I will teach you how to cut straight lines on linen that look like they've been laser cut. I will teach you the basic stitches. We will work through it step by step so that at the end of the work, the milkmaid coif. This is a paid workshop. However, I am introducing a pay what you can or what you will option for those who are financially encumbered. And I understand that in this day and age, a lot of people do not have the financial security that they should have or that they have the right to have. So for those of you who would like to participate in my paid workshops but cannot afford to, no problem. But you do have to register through my website because it is, you know, that the website handles all the registration and notifications and the Zoom setup and all of that. So that's the creativecontessa.com milkmaid coif workshop. However, I have not yet gotten the pay what you will option set up. We're still working that, but I'll probably do that after this. I'll go focus on getting that finalized. Hopefully there was some technical issues and hopefully the gentlemen were able to get it set up. It is on the 7th, 14th, and the 21st Americas, or the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd Asia. So yeah, all sessions will be recorded and will be shared with participants. So if you can't participate in all the sessions, no problem. You can make it up on your own time. And of course it's Zoom, so that means we can interact. I can see you, you can show me what you're doing, I can answer your questions. So different from this format where basically we just have me talking and you writing back and I can't see you or see what you're doing. Yeah, when, where. So that workshop is via Zoom. And unfortunately, if you're in Europe, it's going to be at a it's going to be late in Europe. It will be, so it's 7 a.m. Asia Seoul time, which I think in Frankfurt would be midnight if you're in Germany. And in America, that would be East Coast, 6 p.m. on the next 3 Saturdays. So starting next Saturday. Yeah. So make your own, not a milkmaid coif. I'm really liking how this is turning out. This is pretty great. Just waiting for the bad thing to happen, my thread to snap or something like that. Well, if it does snap, then you get to see how I remediate that. There are some steps you can take to keep going. You will have a flaw in your pattern. But on the other hand, this is going to be on my pate. And no one should be looking at it that closely, that they could actually see such a flaw should it happen. But that's another tip with your finger loop braiding. You have to maintain this balance between tension and not too much tension, right? Because if you pull too hard, say on this silk thread that I'm working with, then you'll snap it. But if you don't put enough tension on it, then your pattern, your weave will be very loose. So you just have to develop a feel for it, and eventually you'll develop a sensitivity. You can feel, I can feel anyway, the point at which a thread is going to snap. I can feel that it's reached like this critical vibration. I don't know how else to describe it, and that it's about to go badly. And that's a touchy-feely thing that you only develop with years of experience of working with thread and yarn, etc. I don't know if I could actually teach that that sense. If I thought about it maybe long enough, I could probably find a way to at least describe it so you become aware of what it is you're looking for, but you'd still have to hone the actual perception yourself, the awareness. You'd have to hone the awareness yourself. Yeah. Oh, it's a hangnail that is being sawed at by by the thread. That's fun. Start bleeding in the middle of my live stream. Okay, so another tip, if you have even hangnail on your fingers and you're working with something like thread, silk thread, then you probably want to trim it before you started. The yarn won't catch it. This thread is, wow, this does not feel great. Let me see. I know I have the skills already, but it's fun to sew together in a new coif is always good. Yeah, I appreciate you, Twitchy Witch. But here's the thing. I like participating in other people's workshops because I nearly always learn something new. Like I learn a technique or a new technique that I never used before, or a new way of looking at things, maybe a new piece of information. My first ever Zoom finger loop braiding workshop, I actually had an experienced finger loop braider participate specifically because she wanted to see how I taught and how I did things, so that she could, glean useful tips or tricks for her own classes. So, you never know. Let me see. You have a question about whether there were women. He has a really cool commission. Iconography of Mary Magdalene as traditional as possible. Egg tempera. Oh, that is awesome, Twitchy Witch. Fantastic. Cool, cool, cool. I love it when clients feel. Jewelers Guild. So okay. Here's the thing I also learned in exploring guilds. Guilds were super, super specialized. So there wasn't a metal, like now there's a metal workers union or a steel workers union even. Because there were probably 12 different guilds involved in different kinds of metalwork, because every stage of metal production was so highly specialized. So, you had farriers, you had blacksmiths, you had wire drawers, you had different kinds of different pieces of armor. So there wasn't even like an armorer's guild. There were different guilds for different pieces of armor. Different, so it's I don't know about a jeweler's guild. I'm going to suspect that there were different guilds for different components of the jewelry making process, is I guess my point. I don't know anything about jewelers guilds specifically, though. Those haven't tripped across my radar yet, which is what makes me think that maybe that's because they were more specialized into goldsmiths and silversmiths, and then even then probably further specialized, in that. That's what I think. Yeah, Twitchy Witch, I'll be honored to have you. It'll be great. It'll be nice to see you. Like actually get to talk. That'll be fun too. So yeah, that's another thing I learned about guilds is just how, I'm aware, I'm tracking, of course, how specialized all these handcrafts were, but it didn't occur to me that there would therefore also possibly be guilds to reflect certain kinds of products in what we might consider the same kind of handcraft in medieval cities. And what we might consider all something, an item that should be created all by one person wasn't. It was created by 12 different people, the different parts made in different ways, which, actually, if you think about it, is reflected in modern production, say cars, right? Most automobiles are made of component parts that are manufactured by different manufacturers. So yes, it's a Ford whatever, but it's, the computer that's in it probably wasn't made by Ford or manufactured by Ford. It was by a company that specializes in, computer chips, for instance, semiconductors, that kind of thing. So that level of specialization and breakdown definitely existed in the medieval world. And some of you've heard my middle English lesson before, but I'll give it to you again. A lot of last names in English, modern English, reflect medieval crafts. Like in the past, that person, some ancestor, if your name was Taylor, some ancestor of yours was once a tailor. Right? But you can actually recognize if an ancestress of yours was a master craftswoman in a specific craft if you have a name that ends in "ster." So for example, brewer is a man who brews. A brewster was a woman that brewed. A backster was a female that baked, was a woman who baked professionally. A shoester was a woman shoemaker. So you can actually see in English surnames, there is a living record of the kinds of crafts in which women were master craftswomen. And also that your ancestor, an ancestress of yours, was such a person. And now how, because remember the inheritance of last names is not necessarily, surnames are actually a relatively recent invention in the Anglo-Saxon world. So and the inheritance of names, from parent to child has not always been consistent the way it is now. And it's not even necessarily consistent anymore, since people are increasingly choosing, women are increasingly choosing to keep their last names, especially in the current situation in the US. And so, children are not necessarily ipso facto inheriting their father's last name, even if he's in the picture. So I always say there's a story behind an ancestral story behind someone who has the last name of Baxter or Brewster or Schuster. Oh yeah. Well, so the aviator or aviatrix, that's a Latin thing, not a medieval English thing, not a Middle English thing. It was adopted. You see it in Latinate terms that are used in Middle English, and then you have executor or executatrix, say in will, which of course I've been encountering increase in my journeys into exploring medieval material culture. Wills are a great way to explore medieval material culture, and increasingly they are thankfully being mapped online. published a link actually to a bunch of wills from late 15th century York for those who might be interested, or half of the 15th century York. Fascinating stuff. They're mostly middle class. There are a couple of knights, there are a couple of esquires in there. So, you know, a few members of the gentry, but, you know, mostly craftsmen, merchants, that kind of thing. So very interesting windows into the past, but even more interesting than wills, because wills can sometimes be literally just say things like, I bequeath 30 pounds to the local parish to pray for my soul, and the rest of my goods to be disposed of as my executor sees fit, or something like that. That's not useful for actually getting an idea of what they owned. Probate inventories, though, are a recent discovery of mine. Like, I didn't even know it was a thing until a couple of years ago. Probate inventories are the death inventories. So if you do a search for medieval probate inventories, you might actually get some interesting results, because what happens is when someone dies in a city, in an organized city, then a probate inventory is conducted to assess the value of their belongings for tax purposes, but also for the purposes of the execution of the will. And a probate inventory details every single item of value in an estate. And so it will actually give you more details than a will might. It'll say things like, you know, gown of tawny velvet, worth such and such, lined in fur, not lined in fur, whatever, right? So a probate inventory can be very revelatory. It can be very revealing. So yeah, probate inventories for the win. And there are probate inventories in New York, I believe. So I've got to go in. I can find some of those. And they did the same thing. The same thing happened in various Italian city-states. Same thing in France, right? The death inventories, a great thing. And I haven't actually looked into what is now Germany, what would have been various polities in the 15th century. So I don't know. I'm assuming they had the same practices. Germans love paperwork, and they've always loved paperwork. You know, I don't even know what they would be called in German. I know a lot of wills in Germany are actually in Latin. For medieval wills are in Latin. So if you don't know medieval Latin, then you're probably not going to. You're going to be a little up a creek without a paddle unless there are translations. But since my focus has not really been on medieval German culture, I actually am not as familiar with the documentary evidence that's available for various parts of medieval Germany. Another question: were there soloist dancers that performed perhaps for royalty in medieval times? I see so many beautiful partnering dances, and also is curious about solo numbers. Yeah. Solo dancing in medieval European courts. Okay, so I'm going to caveat this question with I'm going to frame this response with my usual caveat. Medieval Europe was not a monolith. 1,000 years of history is a very long time, and I am not omniscient. So I will say that in my areas of focus in the 15th century, in the 16th century, 14th century in Western Europe, there does not seem to be much evidence of solo dancing. So dancers who just, you know, sort of, I guess some people might imagine like a belly dancer or something like that, right? I don't really have evidence of that. I have evidence, and the other thing is that professional dancing is in Western Europe anyway, is kind of an invention of the late 16th century, and Catherine de' Medici specifically, actually. She's the one who created the ballet du corps. So yeah, there isn't really much evidence of that. We have evidence of acrobats being hired, and it could be that those acrobats may have done some kind of solo dance performance, but that actually seems to be a pre-15th century thing. There isn't a lot of evidence in the chronicles of feasts in, say, 15th century Burgundy or 15th century Italian city-states of there being, you know, acrobats, those kind of performers. What we do have records of are these great spectacles, produced, massive spectacles, kind of on the scale of what we would consider an opera, actually. But often the people who performed in them, yeah, some of them were professional performers, maybe. They were being paid to do the thing anyway. But often the members of the court participated in those spectacles in the 15th century specifically. So I don't have very much evidence of that. I know in the court of Henry VII, there was a woman who's on the parsimonious Henry VII, no less. There is a woman who is on the rolls as being a dancer and being paid, but we don't know in what capacity. We don't know if she was paid to go out and dance solo and entertain, kind of like someone might imagine Salome or something like that, maybe, but we don't know what kind of dancing she was paid to do. For all we know, she may have been paid to teach dance, actually. So yeah, the evidence is unclear, and there isn't really, in the 12th and 11th and 12th century, you have visual evidence possibly of women dancing solo, but they might also be doing some acrobatic thing and not dancing, right? It's kind of up in the air. Visual evidence, when it comes to depicting kinetic motion, visual evidence sometimes. It can be tricky in terms of interpreting what is actually being depicted, which is why then maybe you go to the text and see what the text is describing, and then that will tell you what the picture is actually depicting. Yeah, so that's the answer. No, not Henry VIII. Sorry, I'm talking 15th century. So in the 16th century is when you start getting a lot more of the professional dancers. Yeah, Morris dancing kind of arises at the end of the 15th century, and there are people who are paid to do it, but the 15th ones are never depicted solo. They're always in groups. In the 16th century is the rise of that kind of thing. But I think they were talking, the question was definitely not, I don't think they were talking about Morris dancing. I think the implication was, like some kind of woman out there just dancing on her own seductively and beautifully. I remember the question in the comments. Yeah. In the 15th century, I have no evidence of solo Morris dancers. And Henry VIII, definitely solidly 16th century. Big changes are happening by then, all over Europe, actually. It's one of the reasons I don't like the 16th century. It's no longer, it's really not much a medieval world anymore. There's a lot of the core structures, things that defined the medieval world in, certain ways are gone. Like there is no more the court, any kind of court of chivalry or culture of chivalry is basically gone. How much that was actually enacted on a day-to-day basis, who knows? But there's not even a sousance of it. There's almost not even an echo of it anymore especially by the mid 16th century. The Reformation really just casts this dark shadow over Europe, to me anyway. So many fun things get tossed out the window because of the Reformation. Bathing included, by the way. Bathhouses closed down. And yes, bathhouses were definitely a place where, certain kind of activities of which some people disapproved did happen, but they were also places where people bathed and stayed clean. And then when you close them, yes, they also unfortunately became a way for the, plague to spread and disease to spread. But, anytime you put people in a space together, that's going to happen. So I'm not certain that closing the bathhouses down without actually instituting a quarantine really helped at all. Yeah, the Reformation destroyed so much culture, and it really set women back so far. People always think that, that the patriarchy of the Middle Ages quashed women. Women had so many more options in medieval Europe than they had in post-medieval Europe. So many more options, especially with the closure, the secularization or the destruction of the monasteries in the Protestant parts of Europe. Like that was, for women, the primary way that they could be fully independent and run business, be respected, high-ranking members of the community, right? The monasteries offered women a way an otherwise potentially deadly situation, by which I mean motherhood. Um, and once you take that away, then it's you really sending a woman to a nunnery as a punishment. For most women, it's what they wanted. And there's a reason that many queen mother retired to a monastery, not because they were sent there, it's because they wanted to be there. It was actually a good life. No one bothering you, no one making demands of your body, literally. I'm sorry, what, Chris? Have for shoulders by now? I'm not certain if that was a typo or if I'm just not getting a reference. Yeah, so and of course the cult of Mary in the Middle Ages gives women another special place, right? And also gives them a special place in worship and in the church. And a lot of those Protestant cults, they really quash that hard. Mary suddenly becomes a footnote in a lot of Protestant churches, right? Whereas in the medieval church, she was the queen of heaven. She was the mother of God. Yeah, it's interesting how that went hand in hand. And it's not surprising, therefore, that witch trials skyrocket and the number of women being accused and tried and executed also skyrocketed during the Reformation and after the Reformation. Thinky thoughts with the Contessa. Yeah. So let's see, what other projects do I have going on? Because I always have at least 5. The reason I washed the hemp, the length of hand-woven hemp that I have back there, is because I'm going to be working on my Joseon style paji, the underpants that women wore in the early Joseon era that helped give the skirts the volume that you see in a lot of the art. For those of you who are interested in historic Korean clothing, I have reached out to one of the researchers who edited the history of dress in Korea, because I want more details. I want to know the stitches. I want to know the kinds of hems, the dye stuffs, if there were rules about color that people had to wear, right? So anyway, I've reached out to her, Dr. Kim, and I back from her yet. I reached out to her yesterday. I sent her an email, and I'm hoping that she'll be amenable to chatting with me or directing me towards more resources in English. But I'm also hoping, I really would like her to do a live stream with me where we can do a live Q&A about historical Korean fashion, and we can get into the nitty-gritty details that are not mentioned in any sources that I've found and are not even mentioned in a dress history of Korea. So I'll let you know what happens. I'm hoping she'll be amenable. She seems nice in the live streams I've seen her do, so hopefully she doesn't look down on my channel as being some kind of silly cosplay thing, and will actually engage. I'm really hoping she will. Twitchy witch. Sorry, I preempted you. I'm sorry if you spent lots of time typing. Man, Twitchy, you and I are right on the same wavelength here. It's like you're my British half. How have you accumulated such knowledge? Right. So I have been a seeker of knowledge my whole life. In fact, in 7th grade, I was voted most likely to be a university professor. And the only reason I didn't go down that path is because academia is a mean place. And I don't like living in mean spaces. Yeah, academia, man, it is a nasty slog. So I have been, I've been an independent researcher, actively researching like this for 30 years. Yeah, I focus really hard on, I have academic training, right? Like my undergrad education was pretty intense. And I had really good teachers in school too, who were very big on, what kind of sources are appropriate, citing your work. You know, I had a whole class at university that was just on analyzing other people's essays and studies and tearing them apart from a critical perspective. So, yeah, but my focus is generally on primary source information. When I read something in someone else's, you know, someone else's book on history, I always go right to the footnotes. Right to the footnotes, and right just to try to get to the actual primary source. Maybe I'll accept a transcription usually, and I'll sometimes accept a translation, but I really do like to actually get to the original language, because, you know, otherwise it's other people's interpretations. So yes, I have been formally trained. I'm only a translator. I'm a linguist and a translator, and a lot of my studies in language involved a lot of history and philosophy and literature. The medieval fashion, historical fashion, that's all independent research and learning over the years. I have a very large library of very esoteric books on all of these topics. And I am constantly reading, keeping abreast. I read other people's, publications. So I never rest on my laurels, as it were. Always making sure to stay on top of the latest and greatest in information in pretty much all of my areas. And I'm just a very intensely curious person, so I think that definitely plays into it. Yep. Also, as a linguist, that gives me a leg up on European learning, because I speak, read, and write French, Spanish, German, and Italian, and English, obviously. And so gives me a good enough understanding to generally get by in medieval Latin, because medieval Latin is kind of degraded enough that if you speak several Romance languages, you can generally understand medieval Latin. Now, could I understand it if it were spoken? Actually, maybe. Depends on how if you use the Italianate pronunciation, yes, probably. Oh man, that hangnail on that thumb is just getting really bad. Not good. I may have to, I don't want to put this down though. See if I can do the thing I told people never to do and chew off your own hangnail. It's just really bad. Darn it. Oh well. Okay, well, I'm just going to have to probably glue that back together or something. Interesting. Comments are popping up and then vanishing. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all the projects I've had planned. Was medieval Korean pants, a new miter, my new reta. I really do want to get either a new kirtle made or a new overgown Burgundian style made in time for Pennsic. We'll see. The problem is that my patterns, the ones I've made over the years, are in our storage room, and the storage room is not even I can't even move around the storage room. So I'd have to I don't know where anything is in there. So I have to empty the whole room out just to even find the patterns, because I don't feel like drafting an entirely new one. But I have some ideas on how I'm going to make my new Burgundian gown. So the patterns, the ones that you've seen, my pink one and the deep red one, those are made based on the idea that the collar is a turn-back collar, by which I mean that it's just the extension of the gown itself, and it's kind of like a modern business suit collar, actually. It's an extension of the gown itself, and it's just tailored such that it turns back and folds down and lays neatly. And there is certainly visual evidence for that that being correct. And if you look at the evolution of the gown, the houppelande, as it's called in French, then you can see that from the beginning of the 15th century. You can see that the collar just gets it starts out as a standing collar, and then it becomes a collar that's laying on the shoulders, but it's still, the neckline is still close. And then it starts widening and widening and widening until you get to the last quarter of the 15th century, and it's that open V. And you can see in garments in like Fountain of Youth depictions where a woman has taken off her gown or is taking off her gown. You can see that the collar is just turned back, like it's the extension of the gown itself. It is not a separate, neatly tailored, neatly tacked on collar. But my theory is that somewhere in the 1470s, it transitioned from being a turnback collar to a separately attached collar. And so I've been wanting to actually follow up on that and actually make a gown with the, not a turnback collar, because I'll be honest, the turnback collar, the tailoring on that, it's fussy as hell. And if you alter one thing about the collar, about the way you want the collar to lay, about how wide you want it to be, you have to rework the whole pattern around the shoulders and the neck and the back. I was really proud that I succeeded in figuring that out when I was creating the pattern myself, but she'd be fussy. She'd be super fussy. And I'm all in favor of maybe a gown that doesn't require that much tailoring and work around the shoulders to get it to work. So I was thinking of revisiting the gown being what you would call the overgown in the Burgundian style. And because I really want to do an off the shoulder one. There's the Mary of Burgundy hours, the Master of Mary of Burgundy, her frontispiece depicting her sitting there praying in that oh so elegant gown with that deep collar that wraps around her shoulders so beautifully. I want to make that basically. And that could be a turnback collar, maybe, or it could be an attached collar. On the other hand, I don't know if I have time to fuss with a completely new pattern between now and Pennsic and make a new dress. So therefore, the logical, pragmatic side of me is thinking, well, I'll just take the pattern I already have and I'll make exactly the same kind of gown as the red silk one, basically. But I'll adjust the pattern to actually fit over top of a kirtle, which if some of you watch my sewing mistakes video, highly recommend, by the way, my sewing mistakes series, you will learn that I stupidly did not fit that pattern over top of a kirtle. I did not. I fitted it over just a shirt, and that was not enough. And so that's why it's super tight in the arms, in the armpit specifically, where it really, and why it doesn't fit quite right over top of a kirtle. And the kirtle has to be pinned to actually stay in place. So so I just have to rework it a little bit, I think, versus coming up with a completely new pattern. So probably that's what I'm going to end up doing. And I have this fantastic, and I know some of you have it as well, I have this fantastic silk hemp blend replica damask, 15th century damask that many of us got at Fabric Guru when they were liquidating it. And I think I'm going to use that. It's blue and gold, so a new color for my clothing palette, or for my outerwear clothing palette. So I'm just like when I started this gown 3 years ago, under the assumption that I would be able to, this Gamora 3 years ago, that I could get it done in 2 weeks for Pennsic. Let's see if I can get a Burgundian gown with its 30 meters of seams hand sewn in time for Pennsic, which is less than 8 weeks away at this point. Sure, no problem, right? I can totally do that. And feed myself and clean and take care of my cats and do content work. Because honestly, content work, I'll tell you, video creation, it takes a lot of time. It's not like the good old days of YouTube 15 years ago where, you're shaky, whatever quality, terrible sound, no editing, getting pushed and getting lots of traction. These days, a nice polished video, any one of my polished videos represents 50 to 100 hours of work, at least 10 minutes of polished video, by the way. It's because by the time you've scripted, by the time you've edited it all together, watched through all the footage, made your adjustments, put in transitions, tweak the color, tweak the gamma, written a script, done the voiceover, edited the voiceover, added music, blah, blah, blah. By the time you've done all that, that's 50 to 100 hours, 10 minutes. Seriously. And that sometimes includes the research that I do for the added information on any given of my project vlogs, for instance. I'm always sharing, the history of the item via primary sources, by the way. That all takes time. Just even finding those primary sources takes time. Huh, the chat has completely vanished. That is interesting. Can someone just pop up a comment? Oh, there we go. Okay. Do you do any sort of live action role playing at gatherings or otherwise, other than your YouTube channel? Are you gathering and frequently attend? Yeah. So I do living history events. I don't do LARP actually. So these are events where, usually you're either recreating, doing a medieval feast or a medieval ball and, reliving those aspects of medieval culture, feat of arms with armor. And how much of it is role playing depends on how immersive the event is. I prefer immersive events where you're not necessarily playing a role, as in like I'm not, uh, Queen Basilworth II of Rotundia or something like that, right? But where you are being your medieval self, like the kind of person you would have been if you were living in a 15th century Burgundian court, interacting in those ways, discussing the kinds of things those people would have discussed, phrasing, modulating your tone and your vocabulary to reflect that sort of courtly venue, avoiding the discussion of modern things. So I'm not certain how much that counts as LARPing, but not the game part. There's no game aspect, right? Like you're to get so many points. There's no pre-written script or anything like that. So that's a living history event. And I prefer the immersive kinds of living history events. Yeah, I do a lot of them. I travel the world. People actually hire me to go to their living history events and bring the Contessa magic. They also to teach dance, to lead balls. I'll be doing a 2-week living history thing at called Penzic in Western Pennsylvania from the last weekend in July, 2 weeks thereafter. And I'll be living in my 15th century glamping setup with my ladies in waiting, hopefully. At least some of them will attend this year. And I'll be dancing and teaching lots of dance classes, and we'll be doing medieval camp life. And yeah. So that's not really a LARP either, because again, there's no game. People don't have character sheets and whatnot. I used to do way back in the day. I did White Wolf system LARPing back when that was still relatively new, actually. Yeah. What happens if someone or something is wrong or out of place at those living history events? So it depends on the living history event, Devondra. I personally like to take the inclusive approach. So for instance, if someone says something that my 15th century self would not have understood or would have seemed strange, I react that way, but in a very friendly way. I'll say something like, "Oh my goodness, you do say the strangest thing sometimes," right? So that, and that is also kind of an indicator that, come back on topic. And it depends on the person too, right? If I'm interacting with someone who's new, I'm going to be particularly gentle with them, versus if I'm interacting with a veteran, then I might be less gentle, but I'll always be very gracious, right? There's no point in being mean about it. So it depends on the event. It depends on the people, right? Depends honestly on how on the spectrum they are, because there's more or less tolerance for deviation from the rules depending on where you are on the spectrum, shall we say. I have a lot of tolerance to a point. It's, if anyone, not you particularly, if anyone is participating in an immersive event and they're not there to do immersion, then they shouldn't be there. And that's a problem. But that's not the same thing as someone accidentally, saying things or acting in ways that are not quite appropriate, right? That's a different ball game. So I always try to gently teach or guide a person back into the space, back into the atmosphere. And there are tips and tricks for that. Like I said, the whole, "Oh, you do say the strangest things. Oh, you're so droll. You're so amusing." And if someone is wearing something, now I can have real fun. And I mean friendly fun. If someone attends who is wearing, something entirely modern, maybe they're not even there to be part of the immersive event, right? But they want to interact anyway. Then from my 15th century perspective, anyone dressed, not in the 15th century is either dressed, if they're dressed in eras before the 15th century, then they're dressed like my ancestors, like my great-great-grandmother, right? Medieval people had a sense of how people used to dress because they often had trunks of clothes from way back when, or they saw the art from way back when. So, you know, I would say something like, oh, you dress so charming. It's so charming when you dress in clothing my great-grandmother would have worn as a child, right? Or, you know, if they're dressing in something modern or post 15th century, then I would say, oh my, yeah, I would view it as exotic, right? And I would treat it that way. Like, oh my goodness, your clothes are so wondrous. I don't know if I would have the courage to dress myself thusly or something like that. I'd be nicer. I'd be nice about it. But all from the perspective of a 15th century person, right? 15th century people wouldn't look at someone in, say, 21st century clothing and say, oh, you're dressed completely modern. No, they would look at it and think, huh, how strange and interesting. Not to my taste, but, you know, it must be the way people dress where you come from. That's how a 15th century person would interact with, you know, a modern person, honestly. There wouldn't be cries of witch, burn them. That's not a medieval thing. Might be a 17th century thing, though. Queenie Evergreen. Well, Queenie Evergreen, I would encourage you to be part of my company. I have a knack for taking shy people under my wing and helping them blossom, or helping them find their own wings, better to stay in the metaphor. Yeah, I totally understand about shy people. And the good thing about a living history event is, depending on the organization, there are organizations that I would tell you to stay away from because they're snobby and elitist and gatekeepers. And there are others, depending on where you are, where I would recommend you try. But if you were to come to Penzic, and camp with me, I promise you would have an enjoyable time, and I would help you grow. For instance, I have my own little immersive encampment at Penzic. Not everyone at Penzic. In fact, Penzic is not an immersive event. There are lots of people there who aren't even there for medieval stuff, and I kind of wish they would find a different event, honestly, if you're not there for medieval stuff. But it should be there. They should be there for medieval. It's become kind of a thing of its own. Anyway, so there are not many places that actually do immersion at Penzic. I do, and I enjoy it. So if you would ever want to give that a try, let me know, and you're welcome to join my encampment. And I can help you, guide you through that process. And yeah, it can seem intimidating at first, but I teach workshops and classes on immersion and how to do it comfortably. In fact, I think I have a video. I have a live stream recording. So I guess we call this videos on demand now. I have a live stream about how to do immersion. It was a live session and people asked questions. So if you want to check that out, lots of tips and tricks in there. But I prefer inclusive immersion, where people are encouraged and nurtured and taught in a gentle, fun manner, rather than punished or humiliated or ostracized. That's not my form of medievalism anyway. It's not my form of living history in the least. It's never has been. I don't like that approach. I don't think it's productive, and I don't think it's kind. Oh, Twitchy Witch. That's definitely why I'm wanting to do mostly clergy monastic history reenactment. It's sorely overlooked part from the groups I know. No, I agree. It is. But also I think, so I'll be honest, in a lot of medieval living history groups, especially in the United States, not so much, this is not such a problem in Europe. It's not such a situation, not as much of an issue in Europe. And by issue, I mean matter, not necessarily that it's a problem. But in the United States, there are a lot of people who are in medieval living history groups, curiously, who have real issues with Christianity in general. And so that comes across, they therefore don't want any representations of Christian culture depicted in their groups. And so that's why I know in America anyway, that's why you almost never see it. And that has actually gotten really bad in the last couple of years. It's part of the polarization of the United States in general. surprising. But it always baffles me because medieval culture without religion, and I don't just mean Christianity, I mean Judaism, I mean Islam. Like, how can you possibly understand medieval culture, medieval material culture without those aspects being taken into account? I don't get it. And there's certainly a way to incorporate the positive aspects of the practice of Christianity, of Judaism, of Islam, without getting into any of the negatives. So I know that's why I don't know many people who do monastic reenactment. But also I think because people have this very modern view of monastic life. Like, they think that these monks, and there were certain orders, of course, who were very anti-fun, shall we say. But all you have to do is read any of Boccaccio's stories to know that the monastery seemed to have been the place where it was happening, right? These people weren't just living an ascetic life, never talking, eating only gruel, wearing, nothing but horse or horsehair shirts, right? It's not... That's just not how life actually was in most monastic communities. So I think there's a modern perception that life just wasn't fun in them, that people didn't, these, nuns and monks had such boring, tedious lives, ora e labora, right? Ora e labora. So I think that might be part of it, Twitchy Witch, also. Twitchy Witch, you're preaching to the choir. Completely ignores a vital part of medieval life, which underpins so much of it. Yeah, I agree with you, 100%. And I mean, it's like it rules out, and like suddenly you can't sing many of the songs that were popular. Like, there's literally hundreds of songs devoted to the Virgin Mary, and are those no longer acceptable because they're talking about the Virgin Mary as, the Mother of God, ringer of miracles? I don't know. But that's just my perspective. So, there's got to be a middle ground between we're outright forcing people to participate in a medieval reenactment of Mass, and, well, you can't even depict a nun. You can't even portray a nun. There's a middle ground in between that, I feel like, and I think there needs to be more tolerance for that middle ground, and not just tolerance, but acceptance, and maybe even understanding of that middle ground. But that's just me. Yeah. What on earth? Something weird my fingers just started doing weird stuff. I don't know what's going on. I got distracted by my own... Oh, no. I got distracted by my own train of thought. That's funny. Okay. I want to be gentle, but this is so bizarre and anti-history, genuinely concerning. Well, I think, Twitchy Witch, there's a lot of people, maybe in the United States anyway, I can't necessarily speak for other parts of the West, that have been genuinely traumatized by modern Christianity, right? They were part of churches that were outright abusive in every kind of way, that were psychologically abusive, physically abusive, also, SA. So, they have, and so for a lot of people, it's a genuine trauma, right, that they associate with that. And yes, it is concerning. I mean, that level of trauma is absolutely concerning. So I understand it from a certain perspective, right? From that perspective, I get it. Yeah. And unfortunately, there seems to be a very large overlap between the people attracted to medieval living history and the people who come from traumatized Christian backgrounds. So, yeah. Let me see. Devondra, you think you might be too yellow for some events? Absolutely not. No, for certain not. In fact, there's a medieval living history group in Bangkok. Absolutely not. We, especially in my living history group, we cover the whole globe, not just Europe. So, I mean, you could absolutely, if you wanted to do a medieval, if you wanted to do a European persona, as they're called, it's specifically in the Society for Creative Anachronism, you absolutely could. Or if you wanted to depict, medieval Malay or medieval, Chinese, or because if you're in Singapore, there's a lot of points of origin you could actually have. Whatever Asian ancestry you might want to depict, if you wanted to, you absolutely could. I know many people who do medieval Korean impressions, medieval Japanese, Ming, Tang, Yuan, Lao dynasty, right? So yeah, color of your skin is not an issue at all. Friends who are doing Mali impressions from, Africa, Ethiopian impressions. I even have some friends who do Aztec impressions or Incan impressions. So yeah, color of your skin, not an issue. Oh boy, I just did something. Well, I got lost in my thoughts, so hopefully that's where I was in that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I personally, for me, my medieval world is diverse and varied. And if you actually read chronicles from, say, the 15th century, but also even before that, you read about travelers from all over the world coming to courts in Europe. There was a king of Mali in the 14th century. I'm not talking about, the 13th century. The 13th century, a king of Mali who basically abdicated from the throne. Not Mali, sorry, Ethiopia. And he abdicated from the throne and he went and he lived in Constantinople. Right. And he lived out the rest. And his ultimate goal was to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem and then to go to Compostela and then come back to Constantinople and die there. And the emperor actually gave him a monastery, I forget which monastery it was, as his residence in the city. And so, my medieval world is diverse and varied and colorful and full of exotic peoples from exotic places. From my 15th century perspective, right, these would be exotic, full of interesting stories and speaking different languages and wearing such strange and wondrous clothes indeed. Right, that's my medieval world. In fact, for those of you who are interested, I did a presentation. Philip from Irish Medieval History and I did a live show on the African presence in medieval Europe. If you want to check that out, it's available on demand. And I talk about just some, not all, just some of the documented evidence of Africans of a very dark complexion indeed, having lived and worked in various parts of Europe. So yeah, you're interested in that, check that out. I think, I forget what it's currently entitled. I tried a couple of different titles because, the almighty algorithm is a bitch. So I don't remember offhand which one I finally landed on. But I think if you go to my channel and search for Africans, probably it should just bring that one up. It's not like I've done a lot of videos on the topic. And that's mostly because, it's not because African history and culture doesn't interest me. Finding written sources for medieval African history can be really challenging depending on where you're going. For one, libraries burned, not just in Europe, not just in the Middle East, but in Africa too. And so, even though Mali had this, Timbuktu had this amazing library, a lot of those records got destroyed. So yeah. So my point is, if you look up Africa on under my content, I'm assuming that's probably the only thing that will pop up. And it was doing the research for it was pretty interesting, eye-opening, and just made my medieval world even more interesting. Yeah. And, you know, there was actually an Englishman who made it all the way to Korea in the 13th century, I think. 13, yeah, I think it was the 13th century. So, you know, even Korea at the eastern extremity of Asia, of Eurasia, because of course Europe and Asia are really just one continent, by the way, geographically speaking, geologically speaking. So, you know, even with Korea being all the way here, you know, at least one Englishman made it all the way to the Goryeo dynasty, which is why we call Korea Korea, by the way, because the first entrance into the English language was from a visitor coming to Korea during the Goryeo dynasty. From that, the word Korea basically entered the English language. So, yeah. My world's interconnected and interesting. As a medieval, I definitely would have owned a copy of Marco Polo. I would have owned a copy of Marco Polo's Book of Wonders as a 15th century noblewoman, and I certainly would have owned a copy of, oh God, what's his travelogue? Darn it, the Englishman's travelogue. His name just popped out of it. Sir John. Damn it. If you know the name of the English travel logger from the 13th century, pop it in the chat for me. It's popped out of my head, John, someone there, I think, if I recall correctly. Yeah, hi Stacy, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, I am doing some finger loop braiding. This will be used to put together my new reta, which is this lovely little net thing that I'm wearing, this net coif-like thing that I'm wearing on my pate currently, making a new one. So I want, because this one is almost 20 years old, kind of falling apart, and rather than going to the effort of putting it back together, I thought I would invest that time and energy into making a new one, and then I can take time and energy to put this one back together in a better manner. This was an experiment. Like I will admit, the reta that I'm wearing on my head was a complete experiment. It was not planned. It just kind of happened piece by piece. So its execution isn't the bestest at all. And I've learned so much in 20 years about tailoring and sewing and millinery that, yeah, I'd like to apply all those lessons learned, actually. And this one, on the other hand, I've actually planned. I've actually thought about the stitches I'm going to use, the specific finger loop types of laces, as they were called in the 15th century, that I'm going to use to put it to construct it. So much more planned process. I will admit that I'm a bit of a maverick in the sense of I do like to generally create from the hip to modify a metaphor. To shoot from the hip, I create from the hip. It's kind of my happy place is chaos. But yeah, on the other hand, it's also nice to plan things sometimes. And then you have a nicer, finished product. I mean, I will admit, if you plan your project, it will generally 99% of the time turn out as a much nicer product than if you just kind of stumble through the processes, making decisions as you are forced to make decisions rather than planning it at least a little bit in advance. With any now, with that being said, with any hand-sewn project, almost no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And I think in this metaphor, the enemy is me, maybe. But anyway, that what I mean is that even if you have planned everything out as you go along, the laws of physics are going to mean that something you thought would work is probably not going to work, and you're going to have to reconsider how to do it. So, yeah, that is the reality of planning any kind of crafty project, really. Especially if you're wandering into new territory, as I nearly always am. One of the things I love about the 15th century and doing 15th century living history is that there are so many question marks Actually, it's not, it's, you know, doing 19th century stuff. Literally, they've got detailed books telling you how to sew things, every single garment. They've got tons of extant garments. You've got so much evidence that there's almost no room for debate if you actually just read the sources that are available, right? And there's no room even necessarily for creativity in the sense of figuring out how to do something. You don't have to figure it out. You just the instructions that someone actually wrote down in the 19th century. Whereas for almost everything in the 15th century, even if you have so-called instructions, they're not particularly detailed or clear, and they leave out a whole lot of understood information. So I actually like that aspect of the 15th century, that there's room for experimentation, for multiple options on how to do something, for creativity in the process of recreating something. And I mean, beyond the creativity of choosing your materials and colors, right, and fabrics, I mean, like the creativity in the actual construction of it, in the actual technique used to make it. Like I appreciate that unknown factor. It definitely stimulates my brain. So yeah. But what that means is that when you are recreating an object, a garment of any kind of handcrafted item from the Middle Ages, there's often going to be a case of, well, I thought it would work this way, but actually it doesn't seem to work the way I thought it would. And that opens up the door for more creative thought and more troubleshooting. And I love troubleshooting. Oh, Queenie, so the organization I belong to, the Society for Creative Anachronism, you should check them out. SCA. There is a big group, big group in Sweden. In fact, this is the last weekend of their big annual event called Double Wars, which happens in Malmö or near Malmö. So that's central-ish Sweden, sort of central South Sweden. And, you know, actually it's very close to Denmark. So yeah, check out the SCA, Queenie. I think it will be for you. And the nice thing about the SCA versus other groups are very, very time specific, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's SCA in Europe who do the SCA plus another more focused living history group on a specific time. But the nice thing about the SCA is broad period and geography, so you can pick within that scope what culture and time period you wish to actually research, recreate, explore. And there's lots of local groups. They have local meetings and stitch and bitch sessions like we're doing here together, but in person. So I would recommend checking them out. Yeah, they definitely hold lots and lots of events all throughout Sweden. Not just, yeah. So could you recommend which of those books you were referring to about sewing? I would love to go and look reading. For the Victorian stuff, I don't remember any names offhand, but I know I have seen reprints of Victorian manuals on you know, how to make corsets, how to make undergarments. Like they've got really detailed stuff because women were making their own clothes, especially lower middle class women were making a lot of their own clothes especially in the second half of the 19th century with the advent of the sewing machine. So there were a lot of manuals produced, you know, specifically aimed at householder ladies who, you know, the angels of the home, right? The ultimate middle class housewife, the invention of the Victorian era, basically. So yeah, I do not remember any names offhand. I'm sorry. Something Harper's something other is sticking out to me. I know there's a Harper's magazine, but I feel like there might have been a Harper's, you know, guide on book on sewing clothes. Oh, sorry, medieval. Sorry, Twitchy Witch. Are you talking about dance? Yeah, so I can absolutely recommend, cooking. So actually, some of the books we're going to be looking at today, when we get to our book corner, will in fact involve a couple of cookbooks I can recommend for you. Sorry. People, I do get people asking me about Victorian stuff sometimes in the chat, and while I have a certainly deeper knowledge of Victorian tailoring and clothing than, you know, most people do. It's not the level that I have of my 15th century sources. Yeah. So the Janet Arnold books do not go into medieval clothes at all, 16th century and later. She did not look at medieval garments. So if you're looking for 16th century, I don't remember which of the patterns of fashion it was, but not medieval at all. And there are no medieval sewing manuals. There are medieval finger loop braiding manuals, like that provided the instructions for the braid I'm doing right now. There are medieval cooking books, there are medieval dance manuals, and of course it depends on what you mean by medieval. So I'm talking pre-1500, because in my view, it's really the Reformation that ends the medieval world. Honestly, that's I think where it really starts, where it really breaks down. And that's why everyone's like, well, but that's the Renaissance. I'm like, okay, but the Renaissance isn't as Renaissance-y as you think it is. It's not as sudden. It's a gradual development. And that's why it can be so hard to pinpoint when is the Renaissance in such a place. Did the Renaissance ever reach such and such a place? Well, no, not necessarily. Some places skipped Renaissance and went right into the Baroque era, for instance. So it depends on whether you're talking about art. It depends on whether you're talking about philosophy. Clothing. I hate the terms Renaissance when it applies to clothing, because there's definitely not a Renaissance in tailoring at all. There's a very linear development, and it's not as and it's not like the Renaissance suddenly has all these great techniques that they didn't have before. So yeah, that's my take. In fact, I would say to a certain degree that Renaissance tailoring actually gets simpler than it was in the previous 2 centuries. Fight me. Yeah. So yeah, there's my soapbox on the terms medieval and Renaissance, which I seem to always somehow end up declaiming single live sip and stitch thing I do, or medieval crafting party I do. Let me see. Is she working with looped threads? Yes, Old Bull, I am working with. I'm working with, this is finger loop braiding and this is silk, and I'm doing a thin lace of five bows. Thin lace, yes, thin lace of 5 bows. Maintenance guy, that's false. What is false? You don't agree with me that tailoring actually gets simple in the 16th century? I think all you have to do is look at, for example, the pourpoint of Charles de Blois and see that amazing sleeve construction, way those pieces go together to create such shaping, and then compare that to the 16th century armscye, please. Also in Austria, in the Langberg finds, in the castle there, they found these panels of these dresses that take advantage of bias cut and bias stretch, and have the most amazing armscye that naturally creates those amazing billowing organ-like so-called pleats that you see on those gowns in 15th century Germany. That also vanishes. So yeah, I don't know. In my opinion, a lot of the tailoring actually simplifies in the 16th century versus the 14th and the 15th century. Ah, The Travels of Sir John Mandeville. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. That was it. Where am I? No, there it happened. Yeah, okay. Sort of got it back. Well, we'll see. We'll see how much we get it back. But also, maintenance guy, I don't think you needed to shout with caps. Goodness gracious. We're having a polite conversation. Even the corset one, it was brought out not too long ago after her death, the Kathy Hay Foundation. The corset one, corsets are definitely not medieval. Of course, Susan, I'm not certain. Maybe I missed a comment there. Is this Mormon? No. No, this is 15th century Florentine. Mormon. Do you know anything about the Mormons? Mormon, nor is it Amish. Yeah, 15th century living history for the win. Oh, you just like caps? Okay, well, that's cool, maintenance guy. On a scale from 1 to 10, how Mormon is this? On a scale of 1 to 10, I am a heathen Catholic because this is the medieval church. And according to Mormons, Catholics are papists and polytheists. So, like, not even on the scale of Mormon. And this dress is way too sexy for Mormon. Although that being said, a lot of my Mormon friends have no problem dressing in whatever manner. So I'm not certain what you think you know about Mormons. Maybe you're thinking Amish, but all the statements still apply. Yeah, all of my Mormon friends just dress in normal 21st century clothes, and some of them do in fact dress up and dress sexy and go to clubs. So, yeah. The Amish definitely do not live in the 15th century. I grew up in Amish country in Delaware, and they have no problem using all sorts of modern technology cheats. Like they use Coleman lanterns, like the propane ones. They're not electric, but they are definitely not medieval. Their clothes are supposed to be super prim and proper, like all of this fabric, all of this silk that I'm working with. The fact that I've got this low neckline, not even a little bit Amish. So yeah, nope, definitely not. Full fabric. Like the Amish are all about super modest living and eschewing the corruption of the modern world. But even in the 15th century, they would have thought the 15th century world was way too corrupt. Like they would have absolutely wanted a bonfire of the vanities. Of course, the Amish are a Moravian sect, and so they don't even come about until the 18th century. So, yeah, they're a post-Reformation development. But is to not use electricity. But let me tell you, I know a lot of Amish who have smartphones and who use solar cells to charge them. So, yeah. But yeah, the Amish are about no makeup, not doing your hair and covering your hair. And my hair is definitely not covered today. Yeah. Different world. They don't, dancing, all of that sort of stuff. Right out. The Amish also wear dark clothes. Exactly, Susan. Yeah, the Amish do speak Old Swiss. I can understand the Amish no problem when they talk because of my German skills, my mad German skills, having spent a lot of time around people speaking all kinds of very interesting dialects of German. Yeah, so definitely not Amish, not Mormon. Yeah, this is coming along really nicely. I've only dropped it once, which was actually fewer times than I expected to drop it. Silk, as those of you who've worked with silk know, she's slippery like an eel. Snakes are only a little slippery. Eels are super slippery. And yeah, it can be really challenging to keep it on your fingers. And I might only actually need this one. This might actually be long enough to do all of the crossbars for my new reta. We will see. And if you're watching, don't forget to like and subscribe. And although if you're commenting, you've had to subscribe because I set that setting. Or if you're on Twitch or TikTok, welcome. I am sorry I did not think about the fact that the chat I don't think comes through from either of those to my streaming software. So I apologize for that. But if you leave comments when the video, under the video, I think actual comments, I can actually see them. Maybe, I'm not certain. I'm new to Twitch, so I'm not certain how Twitch works really. I'll just be frank. And tomorrow I will be teaching Philip from Irish Medieval History how to do this. His first ever lesson in what modernly we call fingerloop braiding, what in the Middle Ages was called lace making, because even in Ireland we have evidence of fingerloop braids being excavated in Cork and Waterford, and I think Dublin as well. So this is a craft, a skill that definitely was used in medieval Ireland. It's very handy. Why wouldn't it be? And so he is going to be learning it as part of his own journey in Irish medieval history. He's never done anything like this before. I think he may have done a little bit of basic hand stitching, maybe, he said. So it should be interesting to teach him to use his fingers in an entirely new way. You know, the thing about fingerloop braiding is once you've trained your fingers to hold the right shapes to be sufficiently arthritically hooked, then, you know, it's pretty good. But, you know, whenever I teach new people, I'm always reminded that most people don't keep their fingers constantly hooked. And so, you know, beginners are very prone to dropping laces, to dropping boas, as they were called in the 15th century in English. Unfortunately, we have, it's really interesting, we have fingerloop braids found in archaeology for literally thousands of years and across Eurasia. But the only place I've ever found medieval instructions for making laces, as it's called, is in England. Even though we have them in medieval Italian archaeology, you see them on medieval purse strings, you know, sometimes in garments, and we have, you know, extant examples in Austria and Germany and France and Spain. But the only place that I think anyone has found instruction manuals is from England. So that's very curious. Doesn't mean they're not out there. They could be hiding in a library somewhere. They maybe haven't been digitized yet. They could be a private library, I meant. They could have unfortunately gotten burned up in one of the many wars that has racked Europe since the Middle Ages. The French Revolution has a lot to answer for in that regard, by the way. That's why it can be so hard to do research, unfortunately, into Burgundian culture and history, especially in the Duchess's household, because those archives were set on fire by revolutionaries, the ones that had all of her household accounts. Yeah, set on fire by revolutionaries. So that's why it can be really hard to research Burgundian women's clothing, because all of the records that would have provided us with real evidence of that went up in flames. Yeah, good times. So I'm thinking this might actually end up being too narrow, and so I'm going to have to do the double bow thing, by which I mean I'm going to have to actually put double loops on each finger and work with double loops, and I'm not super excited about that. I've done it a lot. It's not my favorite thing, especially when you have the kind of situation we have here where there's a lot of going through other loops. That's very annoying with double bows. Oh, yeah, no, sorry. What I meant by 18th century, I meant that's when the Amish came to America, I think was in the 18th century. But they're definitely a very like post-Reformation development. So, you know, very much post-medieval. Almost part of the so-called Great Awakening, but not quite. Yeah. Yeah, it's gotten really, really tight. I'll go ahead and finish it up and then I'll show you. I think I'm definitely going to have to do the double loop thing. This isn't quite thick enough. I mean, I guess it's not urgent. I could wait until Penzik and then buy a thicker silk yarn or silk thread than this, but I really was excited about working on this now, so I might do the double loop thing. We'll see. Especially now that we're at the tight end. As you know, those of you who do finger loop braiding, you know that there's a looser end and there's a tighter end, and that is how it shall pretty much basically always be. But now we're at the tight end, and it's definitely very, very narrow. I can iron it out. I'm pretty certain I can iron it out and make it lie flat, but right now it's trying desperately to curl in on itself, which is common in these flat, broad laces. You nearly always have to kind of iron them out, either with your fingers or with an actual iron. It's just the way that the two halves are joined. There's a twist, and that twist actually causes a twist. Yeah. Okay, note to self. After live stream, go and do Milkmaid Coif thing to make sure that people can do a pay-as-you-go. Yeah. I didn't even think to bring it out. Speaking of which, if you're familiar with my iconic winged coif, which many of people refer to as the Milkmaid Coif and always gets comments about churning butter. Um, oh, interesting. So that's weird. Apparently only one of the microphones was actually transmitting, because the other one, oh, who? Okay, how long was audio gone? What was the last thing you all heard me say? Damn, stop. What was the last thing you all heard me say? Oh, now there's going to be a big mistake in my thing. Oh, poo. Okay, I don't know where I was. Well, we're going to start from there. Yeah, so let me know what the last thing you heard me say was. Yeah, apparently only one of the microphones really seems to work, and I've left the one because one of them died, and I guess that was the one that was actually transmitting sound faithfully, and the other one is still on, and I'm going to set it aside so we never use it again, and see if that is in fact the culprit for why the sound quality has been inconsistent. It wouldn't surprise me because my cats have knocked those poor microphones down so often from very high places. You will all be shocked to hear. Since I started talking about the churning butter, oh good, then not too long. And then the audio decided to move. Okay. Milkmaid workshop will be taking place on June 7th, 14th, and 21st, New York City time, 6 p.m., or Seoul time, 7 a.m., June 8th, 15th, and 22nd. You can register via my website. Currently, the only option is the full priced option, which is $39 or $39.99 for the entire workshop. But I will be instituting a pay what you will option. I just need to handle that. It's not as simple as I thought it would be, but apparently I can just set up a tip option. So pay whatever you think you can, and join the party. I will be teaching all the basic methods, all hand sewing stitches, how to even draft and lay out the very basic pattern for this particular item. We'll be talking about how to cut fabric. We'll be talking about the care and feeding of linen. I will, of course, discuss the history of the pattern in question, the documentary evidence we have for it, in addition to the visual sources. And of course, it will be live via Zoom, so you will be able to chat with me. I'll be able to chat with you. And there will be a recording done of each of the sessions. So even if you can't make all the sessions, you can follow up at your leisure. And you can therefore reference the videos of the workshop later on in perpetuity, as long as the internet exists. And as long as, something doesn't wipe out things that are stored in the cloud, etc. So yeah, that will be next week. Thecreativecontessa.com, I should have said, my website. Yeah, Ryan, Queenie, yeah, Ryan is my condottiero. He is the man you occasionally see doing things, wearing things, dancing things. That is he. He is currently in Seattle. I am in Daegu, South Korea, so we are separated by an ocean at the moment. Oh, is there an echo now? Of course there is. Hold on a minute. Let me, I can actually move the camera to be closer. I don't even know what time it is. What time is it? I'm in this timeless place. Someone tell me what time it is where you are, and then I can know what time it is where I am. I have a visceral knowledge of the time zones of the world because I travel so much. Yeah, for those who don't know, I also have a travel channel, Travels with the Creative Contessa. If you're interested in watching my travel adventures, seeing reviews and videos about places I'm eating and resting and exploring, that's Travels with the Creative Contessa. And I've started a new Walking with the Contessa channel for people who actually enjoy watching walking content, walking around various places. There's a bunch of videos up of walking around Florence, walking around various parts of Korea, including a fantastic medieval village, 15th century village that's here, extant and preserved. People still live in it. It's stunning. And then, of course, for those who like kitties content, there's Kitties of the Palace. Those are my cats. They have their own channel. Of course they do. I don't know why they're not harassing me. I've been working with string all day. Ah, Colorado, 8:40 p.m. Got it. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. That means that it is 11:40 a.m. my time. I've been going for a while then, haven't I? I guess that gives you an appreciation for how long this can take when you're doing a really long braid. And also why you may want to have a person who can spell you. I can feel the blisters actually sort of forming, and that's because I haven't done finger looping with silk thread in a long time, really. Okay, that's not true. I haven't done it consistently. Like I haven't I haven't been doing it as like an everyday activity whereby I would actually therefore develop calluses to protect against said silk thread. So I expect that I'll probably be developing some calluses over the summer as I work on this project and others, and that will help me survive the rigors of fingerloop braiding with thin silk thread. Goodness knows when I do a spade of hand sewing, I get the most amazing hamburger fingertips, um, which only become really visible if my fingers get submersed in water and get that kind of pruny effect, and then you can see all the little holes from the needles. Because I don't use a thimble, I don't like them, because I don't feel like I have the dexterity I need. So instead, I just sacrifice my hands. I sacrifice my fingertips. I don't know. How any of you out there who sew by hand, do you use a thimble or do you also prefer not to? Oh yeah, that's true. The condottiero might be heading to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which would be close to you-ish, close-ish to you, Susan. Maybe close enough to even grab a cup of tea or something. Oh yeah, that that hangnail I talked about on my thumb, I can see very angry red flesh now inside of the hangnail area. That's good. That's great. Okay. That's my own fault for not wanting to stop in the middle and abandon you all while I go and found medical supplies. And also not actually, but more specifically, not wanting to put a big flaw in the middle of this lace without it happening on its own. This may be one of the more accident-free laces I've made in a while. Nearly always there's at least a couple of drops as I say things that will anger the gods with my hubris. Yeah. So is anyone else? What else are people working on? Anyone else doing anything creative? I know Twitchy Witch is working on a blackwork shirt. Ocean Answer, are you still out there? Are you there today? I don't think I've seen you today. Same, no thimble. Yep. Yep. There. Yeah. No thimble. Yep. Hate it, right? Leather loop thimble. Oh, is that like a ring? Is that what you're talking about, Dog Biscuit? I have no luck with end of finger thimbles. I found some luck using a dimpled ring thimble. Interesting. Yeah, I I don't know why I never think about ring thimbles, right? I know they're a thing. Hell, thimbles are almost date further back in the archaeological record than full fingertip thimbles, but I don't know why I never think to use one. Oh, making chainmail. Queenie, what kind of what are you making a specific kind of garment, like a shirt or a ponce? I just did a video on 15th century harness fighting groin protection, the ponce, the ultimate in 15th century chainmail booty pants, which I also realized is probably really a skort. It's a chainmail skort, honestly. You can check out that video if you're interested, Queenie, in checking out options for your particular craft. People so speaking of those ponces, yeah, no, those ponces are not meant to be made. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, go check out my chainmail booty pants video from a couple of days ago. um, First off, chainmail mail in the Middle Ages was super fine. Some people have been commenting about, wow, that's such small mail. No, that's normal medieval mail. Modern mail is super big. Medieval mail was not super big because you don't want holes that allow things to get through them. So yeah, medieval chainmail was very, very fine. Two, those medieval chainmail booty shorts, as I call them, are called ponces in medieval English, and they are not meant to be worn against your skin. You would wear linen braids under those and a pair of hosen, either joined or unjoined, but either way, they're not going against your skin. So you don't have to worry about the short and curlies being yanked out. Although certainly it is a fun thought to think that they should have to come with their own razor for wearing. But but they don't. They're not supposed to go against your skin. Yeah. So don't ever think that. Male, no, at no point in history, as far as I can tell, until the 20th century, was chainmail worn right against the skin. And especially, I'd like you all to remember that medieval chainmail is made of mild steel. There was no stainless steel in the Middle Ages. And so it's going to rust. But do you know how they prevented it from rusting? They coated it in oil. So that mail would not be all nice and clean and smooth. It would be covered in oil. And I don't, you really want to put oily mail against your skin? No, thank you. I'm good. Although Brian Price of Chivalry Bookshelf and a very fine man-at-arms and knight in his own right, he suggested to me that he's had much more success with beeswax, using beeswax to treat his mail after cleaning and to keep it from rusting. And I thought, oh my God, that's brilliant. Because beeswax isn't going to come off on your clothes, anything like oils will, and it will absolutely prevent it from rusting. So yeah, for those of you looking for alternative methods to keep your mail nice and shiny, M-A-I-L-L-E mail, not M-A-L-E mail, consider beeswax. Yeah. And he apparently just rubbed it over, like took a chunk of beeswax and rubbed it over the mail. And don't dip it in a vat of beeswax. That's going to give you a different effect. Just take a clump of beeswax and just rub it over your mail, apparently. And if you have spots that, particularly need extra attention, then you can use your fingers to rub in the beeswax. Beeswax gets super malleable with the heat of your fingers. Oh, nice, Queenie. Yeah, oh my God, the chafing. Yeah, right, Takeda? I know. I know. I've never understood chainmail bikinis just from, it's like, you must not move around a lot in that, huh? Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Takeda, to take 3/4 beeswax, 1/4, so three parts beeswax, 1 part mineral oil, put on when hot, and season like a cast iron pan. So, do you season in the oven, therefore? When you say season like a cast iron pan? Or do you, yeah, because that's how I would season my cast iron pans. I put them in the oven generally. Okay, well, I think I've gone far enough on this one. I got looking at the comments in the live chat and then I completely lost where I was. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up by once again breaking my strands down into 2, 2, and 1, and then doing a 3-strand braid to cap it off. Put on season. Let me see. Beeswax is the Swiss Army. Oh no, went out. I use a beeswax mineral oil mix for treating wood, waterproofing leather, waxing threads. So versatile. Yeah, Devondra, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, it is. Beeswax is the best. Like, you can do so much with it. I use it to make waxed fabric wraps for food and for storage, and instead of plastic wrap, as a plastic wrap replacement. I use it to strengthen all of the thread, to strengthen in fact, this, one of my other laces, I just kind of completely coated. I just rubbed the beeswax into it with my hands. Yeah, beeswax is the best. I love beeswax so much. It has so many great uses. Good for the skin if you mix it into with the right kind of combination of oils into an unguent. Yeah, basically after it's coated, heat it back up, to polymerize the wax. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. Takeda, so I don't think, as I recall, Sir Brian told me he did not have like any direct evidence of that. Is this a technique you invented or created, based on understanding of seasoning cast iron, for instance, or did you read about this in a medieval source somewhere? Inquiring minds want to know. Mineral oil. Yeah, what is mineral oil exactly? How would I explain mineral oil? I actually, you know what? I'm going to completely admit ignorance. What is the difference between baby oil and mineral oil? So if any of you, I'm just not even going to pretend, like that's actually not in my area of expertise at the moment. So if any of you actually know what mineral oil is, please pop it in that live chat. Okay, it's done. Let's see what we've got. Let's see what we've got here. Okay. Well, I don't feel like fighting with those ties, so I'm just going to cut it. Right. Okay. Well, definitely see something happened there in the middle that's interesting and strange. I don't know what. And okay, so here we have, yeah, you can tell where I was using my feet and then where I wasn't using my feet and then where it just got tight enough to keep things tight. And I got talking, so I wasn't paying attention to not keeping things too tight. Okay, so here is, let me see if I can flatten this out enough that you can actually see it. It might be wide enough. It might not be. So this is what I meant by you have to actually sort of open it up because it does curl on itself. Right. But it's really easy to take an iron and just run down the center of it and do the thing. So I'm going to move the camera more into the light so that maybe the light will actually fall on the thing. Okay. So there is the finished braid. Right. And yeah, it's a little narrower than I would like. I was actually definitely hoping for something more like the width on this one, but this is 20/2 thread, and this is 33. So there's a significant size difference there. So I guess I have to decide whether I want to A, remake this with double loops, or B, wait until Penzik and get 33 silk thread from the silk thread vendor, the yarn vendor that vends at Penzik. I might go that route. I'm not super excited about about the possibility of doing double loops. I've done it. I've even done quadruple loops, but it can be a real poop show, as they say. Oh, is there a good way to maintain the tension over the length of the braid? Yes. Okay. So step one, don't be talking to people while you do it. So yeah, Takeda, the best way to maintain the tension over the length of the braid is to not to do it while you're talking to people and thinking about 30 other things at the same time. So number one, attention is required. Seriously, I can tell exactly where I started falling into talking with you all every single time on this braid. So one of the things is you have to remember the tension game is like an inverse tension game. So earlier on at the when you're starting, you need to actually apply even more tension than you think you do. And if you're using your feet, use your feet even more. And as you work your way down the braid, you actually need to lessen the tension because the shortening of the loops actually causes more tension to be transmitted for the same amount of force. And also, of course, you know, the shorter your grip gets, the shorter your range has to be, the shorter your wingspan, the more pressure you can actually apply. So actually, basically, you should apply lots and lots and lots of tension at the beginning, and that should just kind of gradually, in a linear equation, actually decrease as you get towards the end. And normally I would do that. I would absolutely do that, but I really just fell into talking with you all and I wasn't paying attention to my tension. Yep. That is how you do that. And that's why at the beginning I was using my feet, especially to tamp the pattern down, because yeah, that's what you have to do when you're doing really long loops. Now, the other way actually to maintain even tension on the pattern is if you work with two people. So if you actually have someone who's at the base evenly tamping the pattern down, then that will also help maintain a more even tension throughout. But if you look at the extant bits of medieval finger loop braiding, It's going to be harder to see whether they have the same issue because we almost never have an entire length. Usually we have pieces that are short enough where it's easier to maintain the same tension over the respective length, like if it's purse strings or something like that. Yeah, so I'm just taking my fingers to kind of open this up, try to show you better, give you a better example of, because as always with this style of, it always creates a curl in the center. And that curl generally only goes away if you have extra taut tension. Like at the beginning here where I was definitely getting it really well with my feet. It's got a nice, it naturally opens up to be flat. How wide of a can you get with finger loop braids? Okay. Oh, thank you for that compliment. Okay, so how wide can you get with finger loop braids? Right. So you can get pretty darn wide, especially depending on your yarn. So believe it or not, these are the same braid, exact same technique. This is using a thick yarn. This is using a thin silk, thick cotton yarn. This is using a thin silk thread. So you can really get pretty good if you can get really wide. And this is 5. So imagine doing this with 12 bows. So there's some pretty wide ones in here. Now for the really wide ones, you have 2 people working. So there's a one with 16 loops in here actually, and that's a 2-person one, and that's a 2-person chevron. So you could get, if you're using thick yarn like this, you could get pretty darn wide. Yeah. Yep. Let's see. There is a 3-person braid. Yeah, there is a 3-person braid. In the 17th century, I believe the braiding manuals actually have 5-person braids. I think I haven't looked at them myself, but I remember reading that somewhere. So there is the manual that contains this instructions for this one from the 15th century. It actually has. It starts off. It says such and such a braid, and I don't remember which of the laces it was. Such and such a lace of so many bows for 3 people, and then it doesn't actually provide the instructions, which is too bad. Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, I think probably whatever that comment is I don't know. No idea what the originator was trying to convey there, but yeah. Oh yeah, you can see where I got distracted. Well, that's okay. I can absolutely use this as a lace for a gown, even if I don't end up using it for the finger loop braid. I'll give it an iron out and we'll see how I feel about it then. Yep. Okay, brilliant. Well, let us go ahead and hit the book corner. Okay, are there any other questions about finger loop braiding before we hit the book corner? Let me see. I would have wait, what on earth? Oh wow. Apparently the chat on my phone did not feed forward. I'm like, I know I answered that question. Okay, yeah. Let me know if you have any more questions about finger loop braiding. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the book corner section of our show. Oh, Devondra had a good question earlier. Okay, yeah. If I, and this is your chance also. You said you missed, you said I have words. I can English. If you asked a question earlier and I didn't answer it, it's not because unless it was a naughty question and then I ignored it on purpose. But if it was a real genuine question and I didn't answer it, it's because I missed it. So just let me know. When are you writing your book? Oh my God. I have no idea. That's an intimidating thought. Okay. Let me just adjust to this. Okay. So book corner time. When am I doing that? Oh, how often did people make new items as opposed to repairing or purposing old items? Oh, Devondra, that is a great question. Thank you. All the time. More often than not. It was much more common to repair and repurpose than to buy new items, even in the upper classes. We have the Howard Household books, which is a book I've covered in previous book corners. The Howard Household books have records of the Duke. He was the Duke of Norfolk under Edward IV. He was one of Edward IV's partisans, as it were. And his own household accounts, his expense accounts, show numerous repairs on his garments, on his armor, on his civilian garments, on his shoes, on his hosen, on his gowns, on his doublets. So even the Duke of Norfolk in the 15th century is repairing his garments. And he's also getting new ones, but repairing the ones he has. Super duper common. Everything was repurposed. Nothing was, the medieval economy is so circular. We could learn so much about sustainability from the medieval world and how they did things, right? So for example, this linen garment, this linen undershirt here, it's now a camicia, it's an undergarment. Eventually it's going to wear out in certain key places that will make it impossible to patch it because the patches won't even have the fabric to hold on to. That's just how I wear things out in specific places. So then in the medieval world, it would be cut down and remade into maybe a shirt for a child, or remade into a shirt for a child and donated to an orphanage, or it could be used, cut up into rags for cleaning, or it could be cut up into wax linen wraps for storing food, or it could then, and then when it gets to, when at that stage, it's too small to cut into another garment, or it's too ragged to be used for anything, then it goes to the paper mill where it's turned into rag paper, right? So it's a completely circular economy, but absolutely things are reused again and again and again. And that's why we have so few extant garments from the Middle Ages, because they don't end up getting saved. They end up getting reused and repurposed until they're nothing more than fibers. Yeah. You could sell, right, okay. Is that more because it was cheaper or because there just wasn't enough raw material to make new stuff? Expense, 100% expense. There was plenty of raw material. I mean, they don't have the overabundance that we have now, but it's all a question of cost, right? Things just cost so much more, especially anything that required production. You know, it's one thing to grow fruits and vegetables and herbs in a garden. I mean, it takes more effort than it does now. But to produce linen fabric, it's all manual. And there's some water mills that can help accelerate some of the parts of the process, but it's still all manual. It's still a hand labor. And you know, they haven't yet bred flax and sheep to be monstrous versions of their original selves, by which I mean, you know, they don't have sheep that are producing 30 kilograms of wool a year. They have sheep that are producing 1.5 kilograms of wool a year, right? And, you know, you don't have flax that's producing, I don't know, I don't even know if this has happened to flax, but let's say hypothetically 10-foot tall stalks, right? Flax is still knee high at this era. So what that means is raw materials are more expensive. And the production is more expensive, so everything is more expensive. And so that forces people automatically to reuse everything. I'm not saying that medieval people were more virtuous about their consumption, because they weren't. Whenever they had a chance, they overconsumed. But the realities of the economy at the time meant people had to live a more sustainable lifestyle. Yeah. It's insane how laborious linen is to make. Oh, Queenie. Oh, yeah. And wool as well. The number of stages of processing to go from sheep to finished garment is insane. And even before the finished garment, just the fabric in order to finish the garment is insane. And yeah, wool, oh my God, linen, linen production, so bad on the hands. Yeah. My grandma and mom would reuse and repurpose everything they could. They're from Thailand and grew up in a village. Love Thailand, by the way. And I still do the same in commercial rich Singapore. Yeah, my grandmom, my grandmom was a Great Depression baby in the United States, right? And so she was extremely conservative in her use of things. And I only wish she had lived longer for many reasons, but one of which was I was 13 when she passed. And so I wasn't able really to fully internalize those lessons or even see all of them. But yeah, you know, even in America up until the 50s, that's how people lived. Everyone did that. You reused everything. My grandmother would save the paper bags from the grocery store, and she would use those the way we use paper towels now. Like she would use those to absorb oils and whatnot from fried food. Yeah. My peers thought I was crazy for repairing stuff instead of buying new things. I still repair things. I repair things until they can't be repaired anymore. I will take a pair of shoes to the cobbler and beg him to repair them instead of buying new ones. And I will keep repairing them until they fall apart because I do not agree with a wasteful lifestyle. I don't like overconsumption. I don't like going to the store all the time. I do it for food because I eat the food, and it does literally go away. And I'm not that's not going to be a circular economy. Yeah, no, I don't think Devendra, we are kindred spirits. Let me see. Takeda says, in my lifetime, the cost of a decent material two-piece suit with tailoring has not really changed. 40 years ago, it would be about $350 to $400. It's still the same. Takeda, where, if you don't mind my asking, where do you live? Because that's a pretty good price. Yeah, that's right. So that's exactly the point. It's like things are so cheap that, yeah. Be free. Let me see. We should bring back the reusing mentality. Yeah, I'm circular economy mentality for the win. In fact, I have a video called that was originally called Must-Haves for the Modern Medievalist. I don't know what it's called now, but it's about all the medieval reenactment goods I have that I use in my daily life. Like I don't have two sets of things. If I have a medieval version of it, I use it. I don't have a medieval and a modern version of it. Because the medieval versions are handmade nearly always by craftsmen, and also, they do the job. And so why should I have two of everything? Let me see. I still wear suits. We've paid more to repair shoes than buy new ones. There's too much trash. Yeah, exactly. Mitya, same thing. I know it will cost less generally to buy a new one, but if it's reparable, I will still repair it. Also, because with shoes, I'm really picky about my shoes. My feet, I prize my feet, and I have wide feet. So finding nice looking shoes that also fit my feet, not an easy task for me. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of companies have literally, yeah, exactly. Devendra, tell the companies who make crappy non-reparable items. Yeah, 100%. That is bullshit. Bullshit. The built-in obsolescence of goods in the modern era is garbage, is crap, and should be illegal, right? It should absolutely be illegal. And I think actually, in the EU, they might have some laws that definitely incentivize. Well, first off, in the EU, they have the 2-year guaranteed warranty law for consumer goods, which automatically means that they're going to start out of a higher quality. But yeah, you have to regulate that stuff. Companies are not going to do it out of good faith, and consumers will just accept anything these days. In addition to that, I find it amusing how the peasant food, quote, my grandparents ate for survival, have become delicacies these days. Yeah, right. Lobster used to literally be the peasant food. It was the garbage trash food that the slaves got fed in colonial era New England. And now it's the most expensive thing on the menu, right? Isn't that crazy? I'm not talking making bespoke or made to measure. Speaking of summer weight tailored. Oh, yeah. Gotcha, Takeda. Tracking. I was like, where are you getting that made? Yep, I hear you. But yeah, the price should have gone up, right? Like it should have, but it hasn't in 30 or 40 years. You're absolutely right. Oh my God, wide shoes for women is impossible. I share that same problem. My tip, Clark's. Clark shoes, they have almost all their shoes in E width. They're great. I love my Clarks, which is why I literally wear them until they die. Unfortunately, especially with rubber soles, they're not, it's almost impossible to just replace the kind of soles they have. It's not like the nice leather soles where you can actually replace them. But yeah. Oh, wait, let me see. The chat's moving so fast. Hopefully it will become illegal here in Sweden. It's illegal to throw away any garments, which will hopefully push H&M. Oh, is H&M is Swedish? I wondered about that. Yeah, fast fashion is the devil. I'm so resentful of fast fashion. It should be illegal. It really should. They have done so much damage to this planet. It's not even funny. Polyester should be outlawed, by the way. Devendra, thank you so much for joining. I promise I'm going to be doing more lives this weekend. I hope to see you tomorrow. Oh, crap. I hate how I touch this thing and I have to touch it over there. I see. Okay. I'm sorry, some of your comments accidentally got hidden from me. Wow, it's moving so quickly. In Australia, we have the Consumer Law Act, which allows you to return or get a refund for any item regardless of warranty. It's attached to perceived value. That's brilliant. Beef freak, that's great. I really love that. White feet buddy, yeah, you know it, Twitchy Witch. But I can tell I've been good to my feet because at the age of 45, I don't have bunions. So almost all of my Korean friends have the most crazy bunions. Like their toes are literally, if they're not wearing shoes, their toes are in this crazy triangle point. I'm like, oh my God, like in the first joint of their foot. No, not good. I wish I could get linen t-shirts and jeans. Takeda, you can. Men's Warehouse sells linen polo tops, which are basically like t-shirts, right? Knit linen polo tops. Pronto Uomo, I think, is the brand. We have them. They're short sleeve polo tops. Really great. Fantastic. Love them. Love them a lot. Really great for hot and humid weather. You're in the DC Baltimore area. So I'm a Delaware girl. I understand the summers with which you must contend. Fair soul, hast thou a subtle scepter of discreet revelry for the bedchamber's solace? Sure. You people think you're going to shock me. You're really not. But you can get banned, so you might want to be careful. Let me see. Sounds horrible. Queenie, to what was that in response? Etsy has, the feet. Yes, the triangle feet. Yeah, that is pretty horrible. Etsy has good linen too. I make my own though. Good linen. Queenie, do you make your own? Do you actually weave your own linen? That's pretty cool. In which case, you definitely have a visceral understanding for how awful linen production is by hand. Where do you source your linen and wools for reenactment? I have a few places in the UK, but I'm always looking for new sources. In the UK, there is a mill up in northern England. I'm pretty certain they're still in operation. You can get amazing mill ends from them. I don't remember the name of it though. My friends who are in kind of live between Edinburgh and Glasgow up in Scotland actually used to order their fabrics from them. And they were getting like £3 a meter for silk satin. I mean, a real mill outlet. It was amazing. Otherwise, Fabric Guru is my, oh wait, you wanted wool and linen. Wool, eBay is a great place to find good deals on wool. In the US, we have Pendleton, but to get to the outlet, you actually have to go to Portland. So I guess if you make a trip to Oregon, it's worth going to the Pendleton Mill outlet. Otherwise, I get almost all of my wools from eBay. Also, I upcycle blankets, and also, of course, there are actually Fabric Guru does sometimes have wool as well. In the UK, good inexpensive sources. I lived in Germany for a while, and there was a great outlet in Morfelden, which is kind of outside of Darmstadt, sort of between Darmstadt and Frankfurt. There used to be, I don't know if it's still there though. But yeah, secondhand shops and blankets are great depending on the kind of garment you're making. Obviously, wool blankets are not exactly usually like the nice fashion wools, but they can make for good outer garments, like the cloaky thing that goes on top of everything else. But yeah, eBay is really my go-to. Fabric Guru. Linen, I especially on eBay, I look for linen curtains because there are a lot of like white linen curtains that are for sale on eBay. Really good place to get them. Charity shops, of course, also tend to have a lot of, in UK, you might get lucky enough that they still actually have linen bed sheets, because it used to be that bed sheets were all made of linen in Europe and they were twin sized. And now people who had those twin beds, back in the 50s, before, when couples weren't sleeping together actually, and they had twin beds, well, that generation is dying off, and their heirs don't want linen single bed sheets because everyone has double beds or queen size or whatever. So you might be able to find linen bed sheets also in the charity shops. Is a good place to get it. Otherwise, most standard fabric stores just don't have good linen. So honestly, I've had my best luck with the IKEA also, by the way, IKEA in Europe does have linen. They have a fabric section, at least they used to. And you used to be able to get pretty decent linen and pretty decent basic silk there for pretty good prices. Yeah. Oh, Wagu, I miss you, baby. That's my orange. That's my ginger kitty. A prohibition is unneeded. Okay, wait. There's no affront. Just be cautious, sir. I do appreciate your very melodious choice of words, however, sir. No affront, but this is not that kind of channel. Let me see. Recently thrifted some old blankets that were made in Denmark. I plan to make a cloak from it. Oh yeah, good stuff, right? Yeah, so those are my go-to places for fabric. Okay, to the book corner. So I've got some interesting books for you today. Well, I guess all my books are interesting depending on your perspective. Some of you I know will be familiar with these, and I've picked a couple of different topic areas to keep it interesting. So I love cooking. I'm a foodie, and I actually have a medieval Middle Eastern cookbook, which is fantastic. So this is the Baghdad Cookery book. And this is actually a book of amazing dishes from medieval Baghdad. And I think it actually dates to the 13th century, right? So Kitab al-Tabik. So it's a 13th century cookbook. He's referred to the author as this book was composed by someone we refer to as al-Baghdadi, right? The man from Baghdad, right? And it's got so many delicious recipes. So it is a pure translation of Baghdad of cookery from Mesopotamia, basically what we call Mesopotamia, in the 13th century. And the recipes in here just sound so delicious. Now, it is a pure translation. So this is for people who want to take a chance at reconstructing medieval Arabic cuisine. It does have a glossary in the back because some of the words they rightfully choose not to translate and to leave in their original term because they're lexical, right? But they have in the back, they have chapter by chapter an appendix that actually provides the definition for some of the words, for all of the words that they leave in Arabic. So you don't have to worry about not understanding. And there's footnotes that explain some of the choices. But let me just pick a recipe at random. Let me see. Puddings and things like them. So like medieval European cookbooks, they're broken up by topic, right? Like by subject, type of food. We'll go with it, right? So there's a chapter 3 is fried dishes, dry dishes, and the like. And then puddings and things like puddings. So this is like the dessert section, right? So this one actually says, for instance, take 2 pounds of refined sugar and make it into a thin syrup. Okay, so it assumes you know how to make a thin syrup. I do, and hopefully that's what a thin syrup is in this context. Then throw a 1/4 pound of samit and 1/4 pound of poppy seeds on it and color it with saffron and thicken it. And then there's a footnote there that says that is cook it on a medium fire until it is done. Some people add sugar, honey, or minage. Or excuse me, the source is minaj. So he actually compares it to other sources of medieval Arabic cookery to fill in these blanks, right? Some people put honey on it, and when it thickens, put it between 2 flat breads and hang the saffron dyed fat chicken over it, which is really wow. I mean, that's so exotic sounding compared to even medieval European cuisine. But there's also a lot of parallels between the recipes in the Baghdad Cookery book and a lot of the 14th and 15th century recipes. You might even see some that you're pretty certain were just outright taken from, made their way from the Middle East to, say, Italy or France. So yeah, a Baghdad Cookery book. Highly recommended if you're into exotic stuff. Yeah. Okay. Continuing in the theme of cooking, we're to my book corner, by the way. We're at over hour 3 now, so we're at the final section, which is the book corner and final questions and chatting. So the Viandier of Taillevent. So this is actually a publication by Terence Scully. Some of you might have read some of his other works, the Neapolitan Recipe Collection, for instance. I believe he also did an edition of Scopi, maybe. Anyway, what's interesting about this, so he provides, the Viandier is a 14th century cooking manual that actually has 3 editions, at least 3 editions. And he, at 4 editions, sorry, 4 editions. He takes the 4 editions and does a concordance with them. A concordance is where you compare the same text presented in different sources. So you can actually see a side-by-side comparison of how the same recipe is described in the different versions of this book in which which have survived. Oh boy, I'm down to 5% on my phone. Wait, I can fix this. I have the technology. I want to finish my book corner. Okay, there we go. I realized we weren't using the microphone anyway, so what the hell, doesn't matter. Okay, I can also bring it closer. Okay, so the Viandier of Taillevent, so it's a concordance of cookbooks, and it presents the original recipes in the Middle French. So for those of you who speak French of some sort and want to see what the original language is, you can. And then at the end of the book, he provides an English translation of all of the recipes. There are copious footnotes. There's, discussion of what the various terms could mean. There's, a glossary. There's a discussion of a bibliography in the back with various related sources. So if you're interested in really diving deep into medieval cookery, into the reconstruction level and the really in-depth, get into the nitty-gritty of the sources and understanding the recipes, then I can really recommend the Viandier of Taillevent, right? Lots of tasty recipes in here. Just so many good things. Pottages, puddings, soups, pies, lots of pies, roasts, sauces, lots of sauces. For those of you who like dipping sauces, yeah, the Viandier of Taillevent. Okay, Ryan, are you handling the typing up of this, I hope? Okay, moving past food to clothing. Okay, so of course you all know that I love exploring historic fashion through primary sources, through extant garments, and the archaeological record. I always say the trinity of medieval clothing, of understanding historical fashion, is archaeological evidence, so the extant finds, art, iconography, and of course textual sources, documents, inventories, wills, chronicles describing clothing, etc. Well, welcome to archaeology. So this is textiles and clothing, and I can mirror this. No, I don't remember how to mirror it right now. Sorry. Textiles and Clothing, 1150 to 1450. This is a Museum of London book, one of several very wonderful books in their collection. I recommend all of them for any of you interested in Western medieval material culture. People even in Italy, Italian reenactors are using the finds from London to supplement the holes in their own archaeological records. So that's how seminal these works are, for instance. So Textiles and Clothing is amazing because it actually presents whole hundreds of extant textiles and garment remnants that have survived from London and that are now in the Museum of London's collection. So you actually have not just textiles, but there are also pieces that have buttonholes, show how buttonholes were made. They actually have buttons. Extant Fingerloop braids in the museum's collection. And netting, hair nets from the museum's collection, for instance. They also have, here's some examples of fabric bits that actually have the seams, and they have high definition pictures. So you can see how the original seams were put together, the kinds of stitches that were used. And they also provide diagrams with a theoretical reconstruction of the stitches based on their analysis. So you can see the reconstruction of the seam, for instance. All sorts of, so many different extant finds from medieval London that actually have hems and seams. And this is key, even though it's just a tiny bit of fabric. I said this in my medieval textiles presentation last Sunday, medieval Irish textiles. Even if it's just a tiny bit of fabric, just a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter, 4 inches by 4 inches, doesn't matter. is if it has a seam in it, then that can tell you exact how the rest of the garment should at least be put together, right? So this is really valuable stuff. So yeah, textiles and clothing, they don't have many color pictures. There's like one little section of color photos, but otherwise it is black and white, and that's slightly irritating, but I get that's a cost saving measure, right? They show, you know, diagrams showing you how the different weaves of the different textiles is actually laid out. Yeah, textiles and clothing, 1150 to 1450, Museum of London books. You can go to their website and buy them, I'm pretty certain. Yeah, pretty fantastic. Continuing on with with clothing, and also Museum of London books. I think this is a Museum of London book. Yeah, Museum of London books, shoes and patents. Again, archaeology. This is a book that depicts and describes in detail the extant shoes and patents from the Middle Ages that the Museum of London has in their collection. And it goes so far, the diagrams goes so far as to show you exactly where the stitch holes are on the leather, right? Talk about detailed. It shows you the layout of the pieces of leather once they're taken apart. And then it shows you, of course, the final piece as well, what it looks like when it's all put back together. It describes them. If there's dye stuffs, it talks about the dye stuff analysis, right? And again, this is like 1150 to 1450. So it covers a pretty broad swath of the Middle Ages. And for those of you who don't know what pattens are, those are the wooden platform sandal overshoes that you see. If you start looking for them. And they also have leather ones too, not just wooden ones. So they also include patterns, and they talk about construction methods. And here is an example of a leather pattern that actually has, oh, no, I see. Their additional layer was nailed. So they also talk about repairs, right? Because they can examine, you're asking me about repairs. So these archaeological pieces, when they are observed in the report, they talk about the repairs that have been undertaken. So yeah, if you're interested in delving into shoes and patterns and making them, or patterns and making them, then this Museum of London book is really quite essential. Let me see. I find that color photos aren't as important as long as there's a discussion about what dye remains there are. Yeah, I find that I find diagrams and theoretic reconstructions more valuable, but that's me. I kind of like both, but that's but if I have to choose between one or the other, I would prefer the more detailed description and diagram. Yeah, 100%. I don't know. My brain just prefers. There's something about the color that just takes it to the next level for me. Yeah, that's how my weird brain works. I truly love your channel. Inspired by you, I made my own early 1500s gown last year. Oh, Tulip Bee, that's fantastic. Oh, thank you for that. If I'm connected I'm on social media. I'm on YouTube, or not YouTube. I'm on YouTube, obviously. I'm on Facebook as the Creative Contessa, and Instagram and TikTok. If you want to reach out to me, and if you wanted to share any pictures of the thing you made, I would love that. Also, I have an email address somewhere that you can find if you're up for it. Not for me to publish or anything like that, although I would gladly share pictures if you would let me, but just for me to see if you're comfortable with that, I would love that. I really love people sharing their work with me. Yeah. Let me see. Do you eat vegetables, please? Yes, I eat lots of vegetables. I eat a very vegetable heavy diet. I also eat a lot of protein. I don't eat a lot of carbohydrates. Let me see. I seem to have, Ryan, are you moderating? Because I seem to have missed a whole bunch of comments that I don't know what things seem to have taken off. Anyway, back to books. Right. So the final book in today's book corner is Roi René's Livre d'amour, King Rene's Book of Love. Right. And this is one of those amazing finds we found at a used bookstore and got for a ridiculous price. So this book is gorgeous. I mean, again, I don't think it was ever opened. Oh, it has old book smell. You all know what you bibliophiles out there, you know what I'm talking about. Old book smell, right? The smell of a good old library. That's what this book has. But it's never been opened before I got it. It's so crisp. I mean, crisp. Look at this beautiful cloth bound. Isn't this gorgeous? So King Rene was a great, and this is, it's so facsimile that the opening pages are made to look like vellum. I mean, wow. Yeah, Le Coeur d'amour Espris, right? So this is a little known book that was commissioned by the greatest bibliophile, one of the greatest bibliophiles, competing with Margaret of York of the 15th century, Rene d'Anjou, who was a royal peer of France, the Count of Anjou. And look at the amazing illuminations that this manuscript contains. Isn't that stunning? Look at the chiaroscuro, the shading, the detail, the way emotion is actually managed to be contained, the details of this bedchamber, right? This book is really, I love his book of love. It's one of these dream journeys, right? And you can tell it's a dream journey because here it starts in bed, right? Very popular 14th, 15th century. The dream journey is something that really takes off in European literature. And the commedia is a dream journey. It's a fever dream, right? So this is another fever dream. And it's about the allegorical journey of love. And Rene is the knight. He's not called Rene, I forget what he's called, but he goes on love's journey and he encounters all sorts of allegorical figures. And I mean, just the illumination and the calligraphy in this thing is just out of this world. And actually, this is one of the books this is the only one in depiction of women, of ladies, Burgundian ladies, well, Franco-Burgundian ladies anyway, in their kirtles with their nice headdresses on. And there you can see, so here's picture one. So of course, these are always depicted kind of like comic book, like comic strip, like they go in order. So here's scene one. You can see the ladies in the boat. Look at them in their lovely gowns and their headdresses and their veils, right? And then in the next scene, we see those same ladies in the boat. And you can see them in just their kirtles, their short sleeve kirtles. This shows they've taken off their gowns. So this proves that the gown underneath of the overgown is in fact a short sleeve kirtle. And you can see the stomacher. You see that panel across the lacing. That's what you see here. That panel, the inset there, the triangular inset, it's not a triangular inset at all. It's a rectangle of cloth, which is pinned over the lacing, which you can see clearly in this picture. This is the picture that finished the puzzle of Burgundian fashion for me. Made it Franco-Burgundian fashion, made it all make sense. Also English as well. Made it all make sense. That's here in Rene's Book of Love. But aside from the, helping us deeply and intensely, I mean, just look at the clothes these men are wearing. Yow, yummy, right? Look at that, gorgeous. So Rene's Book of Love for the win. Even if you don't want to own it, go check it out from a library, get it on interlibrary loan. If you're interested in 15th century Franco-Burgundian fashion, this should be your baby. You need to look at this in detail. Okay, what have I missed? Have I missed any questions? I'm sorry. I got wrapped up in the beauty of Rene's Book of Love. So yeah, those are the recommendations for today's book corner. Rene's Book of Rene's Book of Love, Shoe and Pattens, Textiles and Clothing, Museum of London Books, the Viandier of Taillevent, and a Baghdad cookery book. Yeah, those are that's the book corner for the day. Okay, everyone. Well, that wraps us up. Any final questions or comments? While I give you a chance to pop anything in there. If you're watching this as a recording, if you pop your questions in the comments below the video, I will absolutely get to them. If you want to support my channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, I have a Patreon for those of you who might like perks. For example, the upcoming pattern that I'm going to be publishing for all of my patrons and channel members of the new Diego di Cavanilia style farsetto pattern that I've drafted and created and tested on my condottiero. I'll be making that available to you. And of course, lots of other videos, tutorials that are not accessible to anyone else. So consider that as an option if you'd like to financially support my work. And tomorrow I will be doing another live stream with Philip from Irish Medieval History. I will be teaching him to fingerloop braid to make a lace of 5 boas. So check that out for more creative, crafty fun. And I will be doing other random live streams throughout the week. So make sure your notifications are on. Make sure that it's not personalized, but all, because otherwise the almighty algorithm will tell you what it thinks you want to watch rather than what you might want to watch. Otherwise, I appreciate you all so much. Oh, Farm by the Yard. Thank you for joining. This is how I roll on these things. So the learning will continue. In fact, we didn't even get to any of the notes I'd taken of things to share with you today. So we didn't even get there. In my research for rings, I've been learning a lot about medieval gemology and disturbing medical practices involving gems. Talk about that maybe tomorrow while I'm teaching Philip to Fingerloop braid. How do I share videos of my nun's kit with you? Twitchy Witch. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. Find me there, Rachel Lorenz or the Creative Contessa, and then you can send me a message with a link to a video, or we can maybe share via Drive. Yeah. Reach out to me there, because I know YouTube is great for some things, but it's not great for others. And I don't think it'll let you post links in the comments. So yeah, reach out to me there. Also, I have an email address that I'm not going to spout out here for reasons. But yeah, if you go to the creativecontessa.com and hit the contact form, but I'm on all the things, just find me. Thank you, Queenie. I really thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Sleep well in Sweden. Oh my God, it's the middle of the night for you. Oh, Neckbeard, thank you so much for joining us. I greatly appreciate your sweet and eloquent words. That's photos. Okay, then no problem. Yeah, you can email them to me if you can find my email address, or yeah, just reach out to me in Messenger via the Creative Contessa page or Instagram Messenger. Any of those options are fine. Yeah. Antonino Sepulveda. Good evening, but I gotta go. The wool, were you going to show that? The wool, where is the wool? Oh, the wool. Have you all left already? Remember I've been talking, there it is. Remember I've been talking about doeskin wool and broadcloth, medieval broadcloth? I forgot, I have a small piece. I'm gonna go get in and show you how this stuff shines. Like 2 seconds, it's just on the table over there. Okay. Back, see, 2 seconds. Neckbeard, I appreciate you, I really do. Okay, so this, my friends, this is broadcloth. This is doeskin. And I don't know if it's actually able to come across how shiny it is, how silky it is. I don't know if you can, if you can really get the idea. I mean, look at the way the folds, look at the depth and the shadow and the light. I'm trying to get the light to play off of it. This is doeskin. This is that beautiful silky. I mean, look at how it drapes. Isn't this gorgeous? I mean, just, So when you talk about the upper end of medieval wool production, this is it. And in the Arnolfini, not a wedding portrait, the Arnolfini death portrait, I'm going to start calling it, this is what she's wearing on her green gown. This is that fabric. This stuff costs usually 60 pounds a meter, $80 a yard, or that's on discount. Like I've actually, now that I think, what am I saying? If you were to buy it from one of the upper end wool purveyors of fine woolens, it's usually like 160 pounds a meter, right? So this is the silk satin of the wool world. This is it, baby. And I do want to make a gown out of this because it's just so gorgeous. Yeah. So yeah, good stuff. So that is broadcloth. That is doeskin. If you've ever wondered what it is, this is it. And you can see how fine it is, right? It is not thick. Look at how fine that is. Super fine. So yeah, this is the dream. If you want the bestest wool for, high quality medieval clothes, doeskin for the win. Okay, I think that was, yeah, designer stuff for medieval times, exactly. And the process to produce doeskin wool to broadcloth, it's super intense. You have to teasel it and shear it and teasel it and shear it and teasel it and shear it multiple times in the medieval process to get this kind of silky quality wool. So it was often on par in cost with silks. or more than, actually, depending on the broadcloth, especially in this shade of red, Kermes. Yeah, super duper expensive. Yep. So that was my final thing of show and tell, I think. Wasn't that condottiero? My condottiero, was that everything? No, I didn't bring out the Visconti Hours book this time. Next time, we'll talk about blues in next week's session. Yeah, this is doeskin envy a good thing? Of course it is. Of course, doeskin. I mean, how often do you have a wool that you actually want to rub on your bare skin? Right? This is the wool that makes you go, "Oh, I understand now why people want to wear wool." That's what this is. Love it so much. But unfortunately, I only have this little strip of it. This is it. It's like it's medieval width. It's not broadcloth. It's not broadcloth. I mean, it is actually very broad. This is actually the width, but I have like an 18-inch by 60-inch strip. So I think I'm probably going to be making a very cool Burgess hood out of it, maybe for myself, is what I think I'm going to make for when I want to dress down and go out into the town and, pretend to be a Burgess instead of a Contessa. Then I'll be making a hood out of this. Yeah. What time do I usually start live in Sweden time? Tomorrow's live is at 7 a.m. my time. That should be midnight your time. On the Saturday morning / Friday night one is at Sweden time, would be 1 a.m. I think normally, but I have been doing a lot of random streams in the afternoon my time, which would be the morning your time in Sweden. So definitely keep that notification bell on to all, and it will let you know when my lives actually start. Hopefully, that's the hope. Because I have been doing a lot more like, oh, I'm doing something, I might as well live stream this kind of thing. Yeah. But my regular weekly shows are generally on Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Seoul time. And that would be 1 a.m. Sweden current one. Oh, wait, no, you're 7 hours behind me. Sorry, 2 a.m. Sweden time. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about the time shift, right? 7. So, yeah, 2 a.m. Sweden time or 8 p.m. New York City time. Yeah. Let me see. Doeskin is so beautiful. Clothful managed to get a hold of a roll of doeskin wool used in the reproduction of the Arnold feeding portrait. Yeah, I know. You got some of that. Oh my God, you lucky. Yep. I'm suffering from doeskin envy. Yeah, I saw that reproduction. I saw the reproduction process. Okay, everyone. Well, oh, great, Queenie. Then perfect. If you're a night owl, then my show is the one for you. Okay, everyone. Well, with that, I'm going to actually go and have some breakfast and get creative with some other things. And I'm going to go handle that thing for setting up the pay what you will for my upcoming medieval winged coif workshop. And probably I have a feeling I'm going to be doing another stream later on today, my time. So later on today, your time, wherever you are. I don't know what it'll be about, but it will be about something. It might be me ironing all the fabric that I laundered, including the reproduction medieval hemp that I have in the laundry machine. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sweden is plus 6 hours from New York time. Yes, it is. Yeah. And I am in Daegu, South Korea right now. So that is GMT +9, if anyone keeps time that way. Okay, everyone, have a lovely rest of your day. And I hope to see you in my live stream tomorrow with Philip from Irish Medieval History, or a random one I may do later on today. I really appreciate you guys. I'm really loving the community we've built together. Thank you all so much for being part of this journey. Bye, everyone. Stay creative.